Welcome to another soothing journey through the annals of history. Tonight, we'll explore the fascinating yet mundane details of life in ancient civilizations, starting with China. As you settle in, prepare to drift off to sleep while learning why you probably wouldn't survive a single day in ancient China. Our historical voyage will then take us through the dusty streets of medieval Europe, the sun-baked lands of ancient Egypt, and even the frigid tundras of Viking settlements. Each tale is designed to gently lull you into a peaceful slumber, filled with just enough intrigue to keep your mind engaged, but not so much that it disrupts your path to rest. So close your eyes, take a deep breath, and let the monotonous whispers of history carry you away to dreamland. Our first stop, the complex and often perilous world of ancient China. Before we dive deeper into ancient China's challenges, take a moment to like this video and subscribe. Your support helps us create more soothing historical content to lull you into a peaceful slumber. Ancient China, a land of mystery and tradition. As we journey back thousands of years, imagine yourself transported to this complex civilization. But beware, for survival in this era was far from guaranteed. Let's explore why you might struggle to last even a single day. In ancient China, your living conditions would have been far from the comforts we enjoy today. Let's delve into the housing situation that would have greeted you if you suddenly found yourself transported back in time. For the average person in ancient China, home was a modest affair. Most dwellings were simple, single-story structures made from whatever materials were readily available in the local area. In the north, where the climate was harsher, houses were typically built using rammed earth or mud bricks. These homes were designed to withstand the cold winters, with thick walls providing insulation. However, don't expect central heating. Instead, you'd rely on a kang, a raised platform made of brick or clay that could be heated from below. This multifunctional piece of furniture served as a bed, seating area, and workspace. In the south, where the climate was warmer and wetter, houses were often constructed using bamboo and wood. These materials allowed for better ventilation, crucial in the humid environment. Roofs were typically thatched with straw or palm leaves, which required regular maintenance to prevent leaks. Regardless of the region, most homes shared a common layout. A central courtyard was surrounded by rooms, each serving a specific purpose. This design allowed for natural light and ventilation, but also meant that privacy was a luxury few could afford. Speaking of luxury, let's not forget about sanitation, or rather the lack thereof, indoor plumbing, a distant dream. Instead, you'd be using chamber pots or communal latrines. The concept of waste management was rudimentary at best, leading to unsanitary conditions and the spread of diseases. Lighting was another challenge. Candles were expensive, so most people relied on oil lamps. These provided dim, flickering light and filled the house with smoke. Your daily routine would largely be dictated by the rising and setting of the sun. Space was at a premium, especially in urban areas. Extended families often lived together in cramped quarters. Personal space, forget about it. You'd be sharing your living area with multiple generations, livestock, and probably a fair number of pests. If you were fortunate enough to be part of the elite, your housing situation would be markedly different. The wealthy lived in expansive compounds with multiple courtyards, ornate decorations, and separate quarters for family members and servants. But even these grand homes lacked many of the basic amenities we take for granted today. So the next time you complain about your living situation, remember, in ancient China, you'd be lucky to have 4 walls, a roof that doesn't leak, and a warm place to sleep. The housing conditions of the past serve as a stark reminder of how far we've come in terms of comfort and convenience. As the sun rises over ancient China, you might think your morning routine would be similar to today's. However, you'd be in for quite a surprise. Let's explore the intricacies of morning hygiene in this distant era. First, let's talk about teeth cleaning. Unlike our modern toothbrushes and minty fresh toothpaste, ancient Chinese people used chew sticks. These were small twigs from aromatic trees like willow or cinnamon. You take one end of the stick and fray it by chewing, creating a primitive brush. Then, you'd use this frayed end to scrub your teeth. The natural oils in the wood would help freshen your breath, but it was far from the thorough cleaning we're used to today. Next up, face washing. You might expect to reach for a bar of soap, but soap as we know it didn't exist in ancient China. Instead, you'd likely use a mixture of ground mung beans and water to create a paste. This paste would act as a gentle exfoliant, removing dead skin cells and leaving your face feeling refreshed. However, it wouldn't have the same cleansing power as modern facial cleansers, so your skin might not feel as clean as you're accustomed to. Now let's move on to an essential part of any morning routine, using the bathroom. In ancient China, this experience would be vastly different from what you're used to. Most people didn't have indoor plumbing or private bathrooms. Instead, you'd likely use a communal latrine, or, if you were lucky, a private chamber pot. These pots would be emptied by servants or family members into nearby fields or rivers. The smell and lack of privacy would be quite shocking to our modern sensibilities. After taking care of your business, you need to clean yourself. Toilet paper hadn't been invented yet, so you'd use what was available. This could range from leaves and grass to pieces of cloth or even smooth stones. Not exactly the soft, quilted experience we're used to today. Finally, let's discuss bathing. While the wealthy might have access to private baths, most people in ancient China didn't bathe daily. Instead, you might take a weekly trip to a public bathhouse or simply wipe yourself down with a damp cloth. These bathhouses were often crowded and not always hygienic by our standards. The water wouldn't be changed frequently, and you'd be sharing it with many others. The concept of hot running water was still centuries away. As you can see, morning hygiene in ancient China was a far cry from our modern routine. The lack of familiar products and conveniences would make even the simplest tasks feel strange and uncomfortable. It's a stark reminder of how much our daily lives have changed over the centuries. As we delve deeper into the daily life of ancient China, let's explore the culinary landscape that shaped the diets of millions. The staple food for most Chinese people throughout history was rice, particularly in the southern regions where the climate was more suitable for its cultivation. In northern China, where the climate was drier and cooler, millet and wheat were more common. These grains formed the foundation of most meals, often prepared as congee, a type of rice porridge, or steamed buns made from wheat flour. Vegetables played a crucial role in the ancient Chinese diet. Common vegetables included soybeans, bok choy, bamboo shoots, and various types of leafy greens. These were often pickled or preserved to last through the winter months when fresh produce was scarce. Meat, while present in the diet, was not as abundant as it is in modern times. Pork was the most common meat consumed, followed by chicken and fish. However, the average peasant would have eaten meat infrequently, perhaps only during festivals or special occasions. The wealthy elite, on the other hand, enjoyed a more varied and luxurious diet. They had access to exotic meats such as bear paws, camel humps, and even monkey brains. These delicacies were often served at elaborate banquets and were symbols of status and wealth. Tea, which we now associate closely with Chinese culture, became popular during the Tang Dynasty, 618–7 CE. It was initially consumed for its medicinal properties, but later became a daily beverage for people of all social classes. Cooking methods in ancient China were diverse and sophisticated. Stir-frying, a technique still popular today, was developed to conserve fuel and cook food quickly. Steaming was another common method, particularly for fish and dumplings. The concept of balancing flavors and nutritional elements was central to Chinese cuisine. The philosophy of yin and yang extended to food, with the belief that a proper balance of hot and cold foods was essential for health. Interestingly, dairy products were almost entirely absent from the ancient Chinese diet. Unlike their nomadic neighbors to the north, the settled agricultural society of China did not traditionally herd cattle for milk. Chopsticks, which we now consider quintessentially Chinese, became the primary eating utensils during the Han Dynasty, 206 BCE, 220 CE. Before that, people primarily ate with their hands or used spoons for liquids. As we conclude this segment on ancient Chinese food and diet, it's clear that while some aspects might seem familiar, surviving on this diet would be quite challenging for modern palates accustomed to greater variety and abundance. In ancient China, the concept of work and labor was vastly different from what we experience today. Let's delve into the daily grind of the average Chinese citizen during this era. Agriculture was the backbone of ancient Chinese society, with the vast majority of the population working as farmers. The agricultural calendar dictated the rhythm of life, with planting and harvesting seasons determining the work patterns of entire communities. Rice cultivation was particularly labor-intensive. Farmers would spend long hours bent over in knee-deep water, planting and tending to their crops. The work was backbreaking, often starting before dawn and continuing until dusk. But it wasn't just farmers who faced grueling work conditions. Artisans and craftsmen in ancient China also endured long hours and challenging tasks. Pottery makers, for instance, would spend days shaping clay, firing kilns, and applying intricate glazes to create the exquisite ceramics that China became famous for. Silk production, another cornerstone of ancient Chinese industry, was equally demanding. Workers, often women and children, would spend hours tending to silkworms, carefully unraveling cocoons and weaving delicate threads into fabric. For those in urban areas, life wasn't much easier. Merchants faced long journeys along treacherous trade routes, battling harsh weather conditions and the constant threat of bandits. Shop owners worked from dawn to dusk, 7 days a week with little respite. Even scholars who were highly respected in ancient Chinese society faced their own set of challenges. The path to becoming a government official through the imperial examination system required years of intense study and memorization, often at the expense of one's health and social life. It's important to note that the concept of weekends or vacations as we know them today simply didn't exist in ancient China. Work was a constant, only interrupted by occasional festivals or religious observances. Child labor was also a common practice. Children as young as 5 or 6 would be expected to contribute to the family's livelihood, whether by helping in the fields, assisting in workshops, or performing household chores. The elderly weren't exempt from labor either. In a society that valued filial piety, older family members were expected to continue contributing to the household for as long as they were physically able. While some professions, such as government officials or wealthy merchants, enjoyed better working conditions, the vast majority of ancient Chinese citizens endured a life of constant toil and minimal rest. The modern concept of work-life balance would have been utterly foreign to them. In ancient China, disease was a constant threat, and medical practices were a blend of the mystical and practical. Let's explore why you might not have survived long in this era of limited medical knowledge and rampant illness. First, consider the living conditions. Ancient Chinese cities were densely populated, with poor sanitation and limited access to clean water. These factors created perfect breeding grounds for various diseases. One of the most common ailments was dysentery, caused by contaminated food and water. Without modern antibiotics, a simple case of diarrhea could quickly become life-threatening due to severe dehydration. Malaria was another prevalent threat, especially in southern China. The disease, spread by mosquitoes, caused recurring bouts of fever and chills. Traditional remedies, while sometimes effective, often fell short of providing a cure. Smallpox, a highly contagious viral infection, periodically swept through populations, leaving survivors scarred and sometimes blind. The concept of vaccination wouldn't be introduced to China until the 18th century. When faced with these ailments, ancient Chinese doctors relied on a combination of herbal remedies, acupuncture, and moxibustion, the burning of dried mugwort on specific points of the body. While some of these treatments had merit, many were based on the concept of balancing qi, or life force, rather than addressing specific pathogens. This approach, while holistic, often failed to combat severe infections effectively. One intriguing medical text from the time was the treatise on cold damage disorders, written by Zhang Zhongjing in the Eastern Han Dynasty. This work detailed various herbal formulas for treating febrile diseases, some of which are still used in traditional Chinese medicine today. However, the effectiveness of these treatments varied widely. Without a clear understanding of germ theory or the ability to identify specific pathogens, doctors often misdiagnosed illnesses, leading to ineffective or even harmful treatments. Surgery, when performed, was extremely risky. Anesthesia, as we know it, didn't exist, and the concept of sterilization was unknown. A simple procedure could easily lead to fatal infection. It's worth noting that not all ancient Chinese medical practices were ineffective. The use of certain herbs, like artemisinin for malaria, has been validated by modern science. However, these successes were often the exception rather than the rule. In this era of limited medical knowledge, your best bet for survival would have been prevention. Maintaining personal hygiene, avoiding contaminated water, and living in less crowded areas could have increased your chances of avoiding deadly diseases. As we transition to our next topic, remember that while ancient China made significant contributions to medicine, the average person's life expectancy was still dramatically shorter than today, largely due to the constant threat of disease and limited medical care. In ancient China, the social structure was as rigid as the Great Wall itself, with distinct classes that determined every aspect of a person's life. At the top of this intricate hierarchy sat the emperor, considered the son of heaven and believed to rule by divine right. Directly beneath the emperor were the nobles and landowners, who wielded considerable power and influence. These elite members of society often held important government positions and controlled vast estates. Their lives were marked by luxury and privilege, a stark contrast to the lower classes. The next rung on the social ladder was occupied by the scholar officials, also known as the Shi class. These individuals were highly educated and had passed the rigorous imperial examinations, which tested their knowledge of Confucian classics, literature, and government administration. The scholar officials formed the backbone of the Chinese bureaucracy and were respected for their wisdom and learning. Below the scholar officials were the peasants, who made up the vast majority of the population. Despite their low status, peasants were considered vital to society as they produced the food that sustained the empire. Their lives were characterized by hard labor, with long days spent tending to crops and paying heavy taxes to their landlords and the government. Artisans and craftsmen formed another distinct class in ancient Chinese society. These skilled workers produced a wide range of goods, from simple pottery to intricate jade carving. While their craftsmanship was valued, they were still considered inferior to the scholar officials and peasants in the social hierarchy. At the bottom of the social structure were the merchants. Despite often being wealthy, merchants were looked down upon in Confucian society, which valued scholarly pursuits and agriculture over commerce. This disdain for trade persisted throughout much of Chinese history, influencing economic policies and social attitudes. Outside of this formal hierarchy were the mean people, a category that included slaves, prostitutes, and other marginalized groups. These individuals had few rights and were often treated as less than human by the rest of society. It's important to note that social mobility in ancient China was extremely limited. While it was theoretically possible for someone from a lower class to rise through education and the imperial examination system, in practice, such occurrences were rare. Most people remained in the social class they were born into for their entire lives. This rigid social structure had profound implications for daily life in ancient China. It determined not only one's occupation and economic status, but also influenced clothing, housing, and even the type of education one could receive. The system was reinforced through laws, customs, and social expectations, creating a society where everyone knew their place and rarely questioned the established order. As we conclude our journey through ancient China, it's clear that survival in this era would have been a formidable challenge for modern individuals. The rigid social hierarchy, harsh punishments, and constant threat of invasion or rebellion created a society where vigilance and adherence to strict codes of conduct were paramount. The technological limitations of the time meant that even simple tasks we take for granted today, like obtaining clean water or treating minor illnesses, could become life-threatening ordeals. The lack of modern medical knowledge and sanitation practices made every day a potential battle against disease and infection. Moreover, the cultural and linguistic barriers would have made it nearly impossible for an outsider to integrate seamlessly into ancient Chinese society. The complex system of etiquette, the importance of family lineage, and the intricate rituals surrounding daily life would have been overwhelming to navigate without years of immersion and study. While ancient China was undoubtedly a cradle of innovation and philosophical thought, it was also a world fraught with dangers both seen and unseen. From the looming threat of barbarian invasions to the subtle perils of political intrigue within the imperial court, survival required a combination of skill, luck, and an intimate understanding of the social landscape. As we drift off to sleep, let's appreciate the comforts and securities of our modern world, while acknowledging the resilience and ingenuity of those who lived and thrived in the challenging times of ancient China. As we leave behind the intricacies of ancient Chinese society, let's shift our focus to another fascinating, yet equally challenging period in history. Our next destination takes us across continents and centuries to a time and place where survival was just as precarious, if not more so. As we sail through the mists of time, we arrive at the shores of Scandinavia during the Viking Age. This era, spanning from the late 8th to the mid-11th century, was marked by exploration, trade, and conquest. The Vikings, known for their longships and fierce warriors, left an indelible mark on European history. But life in Viking society was far more complex than popular culture often portrays. Let's delve into the daily realities of Norse existence, where survival demanded strength, skill, and adaptability. As we delve into the Viking Age, let's explore the daily life of these notorious Norse people. Contrary to popular belief, not all Vikings were bloodthirsty raiders. Many were farmers, craftsmen, and traders who led relatively mundane lives. The typical Viking day began at dawn. Families lived in longhouses, structures made of wood with thatched roofs. These houses were often divided into sections for different purposes. In the morning, the women of the household would rekindle the central hearth fire, which had been banked overnight. This fire was crucial for warmth, cooking, and light. The first meal of the day was simple, usually consisting of leftover porridge from the night before, perhaps mixed with some dried fruit or nuts. Bread was a staple, often made from barley or rye. After breakfast, the men would head out to tend to their primary occupations. For many, this meant working in the fields. Viking agriculture was based on a system of crop rotation and animal husbandry. They grew crops such as barley, rye, and oats. Vegetables like onions, beans, and peas were also cultivated. In coastal areas, fishing was an important part of their diet and economy. Women, meanwhile, had numerous responsibilities within the household. They would spin wool, weave cloth, and sew garments for the family. They also prepared meals, tended to children, and managed the household's resources. Children were expected to contribute to the household from a young age. Boys would often help their fathers in the fields or learn a craft, while girls assisted their mothers with domestic tasks. The Vikings were skilled craftsmen. Blacksmiths were highly respected, creating tools, weapons, and jewelry. Woodworkers crafted everything from furniture to ships. Potters, tanners, and bone carvers all had important roles in Viking society. Trade was a significant part of Viking life. While we often think of Vikings as raiders, many were peaceful merchants. They established trade routes that stretched from North America to the Middle East, exchanging goods such as furs, amber, honey, and slaves for silver, silk, and spices. The main meal of the day was eaten in the evening when work was done. This would typically consist of a stew made from whatever meat was available: beef, pork, or mutton, along with vegetables. Fish was also a common part of their diet. After the meal, families would gather around the hearth. This was a time for storytelling, where the Norse sagas and myths were passed down orally from generation to generation. These tales of gods, heroes, and great deeds were an integral part of Viking culture. The Vikings had a rich tradition of games and sports. Chess-like board games such as H-Nefatafel were popular, as were physical contests of strength and skill. Wrestling, for instance, was both a sport and a method of settling disputes. Hygiene was more important to Vikings than many people realize. They bathed regularly, at least once a week, which was more frequent than many of their European contemporaries. They also used combs, ear spoons, and even tweezers for personal grooming. Religion played a significant role in daily life. The Norse gods were believed to influence all aspects of existence. Odin, Thor, and Freya were among the most important deities, each associated with different aspects of life and nature. Religious rituals were often integrated into daily activities. For example, a farmer might make a small offering to Freya, the god of fertility, before planting crops. More elaborate ceremonies were held for major events like harvests or before embarking on sea voyages. The concept of fate, or weird, was central to Viking philosophy. They believed that each person's destiny was predetermined, which contributed to their legendary fearlessness in battle. As evening turned to night, families would gather once more around the hearth. The fire would be banked to keep embers alive until morning, and people would retire to their sleeping areas within the longhouse. It's worth noting that while this describes a typical day, life could vary greatly depending on social status. Jarls or chieftains lived more luxuriously, while thralls or slaves endured much harsher conditions. The changing seasons greatly influenced Viking life. Summers were a time of intense activity, with farming, raiding, and trading expeditions taking place. Winters, on the other hand, were long and harsh, forcing people to stay indoors and rely on stored food. During these winter months, indoor activities became more important. This was when much of the crafting took place, weaving, carving, and metalworking. It was also a time for repairing tools and weapons in preparation for the coming spring. The Vikings had a unique legal system called the Thing, a regular assembly where laws were made and disputes were settled. While not a daily occurrence, these meetings were an important part of Viking social structure. As we conclude our look at daily life in the Viking Age, it's clear that while their culture was indeed shaped by warfare and exploration, the majority of Vikings led lives focused on family, community, and the challenges of survival in a harsh northern climate. Their legacy extends far beyond the stereotype of horn-helmeted raiders. The Vikings were skilled sailors, traders, and craftsmen who left an indelible mark on European history and culture. Their daily lives, though often overlooked, provide a fascinating window into a complex and influential civilization. As we conclude our journey through the Viking Age, it's important to reflect on the lasting impact these Norse explorers and warriors had on European history. While their reputation for violence often overshadows other aspects of their culture, the Vikings were also skilled traders, craftsmen, and settlers. Their longships, which we discussed earlier, not only facilitated raids, but also enabled extensive trade networks and exploration. Viking merchants traveled as far as Constantinople and the Middle East, exchanging goods and ideas with diverse cultures. In terms of legacy, Viking influence can still be seen in modern-day Scandinavia, the British Isles, and even parts of North America. Place names, linguistic influences, and genetic traces all point to their far-reaching impact. However, it's crucial to remember that life during the Viking Age was far from glamorous for the average person. Harsh winters, limited medical knowledge, and the constant threat of violence made survival a daily challenge. As we drift off to sleep, let's appreciate the comforts of our modern world while acknowledging the complex history that has shaped our present. The Viking Age, with its blend of brutality and innovation, serves as a reminder of how far human civilization has come. As we conclude our exploration of ancient China's challenges, let's shift our focus to another intriguing period in history. Our next destination takes us across continents and centuries, to a time and place equally fraught with danger and mystery for the average person. As we leave the complexities of ancient China behind, our journey through history takes us to another formidable civilization, ancient Rome. This powerful empire, spanning 3 continents and over 1,000 years, has left an indelible mark on Western civilization. From its humble beginnings as a small city-state to its zenith as a dominant superpower, Rome's influence on law, architecture, and culture continues to resonate in our modern world. But what was daily life really like for the average Roman citizen? As we transition from the complexities of ancient China, let's journey westward to explore the daily life in ancient Rome. While often romanticized in modern media, the reality of existence in this powerful empire was far from glamorous for the average citizen. Picture yourself waking up in a cramped insula, a multi-story apartment building made of wood and brick. These structures, often poorly constructed and highly flammable, housed the majority of Rome's urban population. As you rise from your hard pallet, the first thing you notice is the overwhelming stench permeating the air. Ancient Rome was not known for its cleanliness. The streets were filled with garbage, human waste, and animal droppings. There was no organized waste management system, and people often simply threw their refuse out of windows onto the streets below. Walking through the city was a hazardous affair, both for your health and your physical safety. Your morning ablutions would be a far cry from the luxurious baths we associate with Roman culture. While public baths did exist, they were not a daily occurrence for most. Instead, you'd likely use a chamber pot, which would later be emptied into the streets, or, if you were lucky, into the complex sewer system known as the Cloaca Maxima. Breakfast or entaculum would be a simple affair. You might have some bread dipped in wine, perhaps some cheese or olives if you could afford it. The Roman diet was largely vegetarian for the lower classes, with meat being a luxury reserved for the wealthy or special occasions. As you head out to work, you'd navigate the narrow, winding streets of Rome. The city was a chaotic maze of buildings with no real urban planning. Traffic was a nightmare, with carts, animals, and pedestrians all vying for space. Julius Caesar even had to ban wheeled traffic during daylight hours to alleviate congestion. Your workday would likely be long and arduous. If you were a craftsman or shopkeeper, you'd spend your day in a small, dark workshop or taberna. These spaces often doubled as living quarters, with families sleeping in the back or above the shop. The workday would start at dawn and continue until dusk, with only a brief break for lunch or prandium. For those working as unskilled laborers, life was even harder. You might find yourself toiling in the fields outside the city, working on construction projects or loading and unloading goods at the port of Ostia. The work was backbreaking and dangerous, with little regard for worker safety. As midday approached, you might take a break to visit a thermopolium, a kind of ancient fast food restaurant. These establishments served hot food and drinks to busy workers who couldn't return home for meals. The menu would typically include simple dishes like porridge, stews, and bread. After work, if you had some spare time and money, you might visit the public baths. These were not just places for cleaning, but important social hubs where people gathered to gossip, conduct business, and relax. The bathing process involved moving through a series of rooms of increasing heat, followed by a cold plunge. However, it's important to note that these baths, while impressive, were not as hygienic as we might imagine. The water was rarely changed, and diseases could easily spread in the warm, moist environment. Parasites like ringworm were common, and there are even accounts of people drowning in the crowded pools. As evening fell, you'd return to your insula for the main meal of the day, cena. This would be another simple affair for most, perhaps some vegetable soup or porridge with bread and wine. The wealthy, of course, enjoyed elaborate multi-course meals, but such luxuries were far beyond the reach of the average Roman. Entertainment options in the evening were limited for the lower classes. You might gather with neighbors to share stories or play simple games. On special occasions, there might be public games or festivals to attend, but these were not everyday occurrences. As night fell, the dangers of the city increased. Rome had no street lighting, and the narrow alleys became havens for criminals. Muggings and assaults were common, and it was considered foolish to venture out after dark without an escort or a torch. Sleep would come early for most, as artificial lighting was expensive. Oil lamps and candles were used sparingly, and most people simply went to bed when it got dark. Your sleeping quarters would be cramped and uncomfortable, often shared with family members or, in the case of the very poor, strangers in a cheap boarding house. Health was a constant concern in ancient Rome. The dense population, poor sanitation, and lack of medical knowledge meant that diseases spread rapidly. Malaria was endemic in many parts of the empire, and epidemics of more serious diseases like smallpox could devastate entire communities. Medical care, such as it was primitive by modern standards. While there were doctors, their treatments were often based on superstition rather than science. Bloodletting was a common practice, and many remedies involved ingredients we would consider bizarre or even dangerous today. Life expectancy was short, with many dying in childhood. Those who survived to adulthood could expect to live only into their 40s or 50s at best. Childbirth was particularly dangerous, with many women dying in labor or from complications afterward. Despite these hardships, it's important to remember that the Romans didn't view their lives as miserable. This was simply the reality they knew. They took pride in their city and their empire and found joy in simple pleasures, a good meal, the company of friends, or the excitement of the games. As we conclude our exploration of daily life in ancient Rome, we're reminded that while the empire achieved great things in art, architecture, and governance, the reality for most of its citizens was far from the marble-clad glory we often imagine. It was a life of hard work, simple pleasures, and constant challenges, a far cry from the comforts we enjoy today. As we conclude our journey through ancient Rome, it's clear that daily life in this ancient civilization was far from the romanticized version often portrayed in popular culture. The challenges faced by ordinary Romans were numerous and daunting, making survival a constant struggle. From the moment you woke up in your cramped insular apartment, you'd be confronted with the harsh realities of urban life. The lack of proper sanitation, the ever-present threat of fire, and the constant noise and chaos of the streets would be your constant companions. Your diet, while varied, would be heavily dependent on your social status. The poor would subsist mainly on bread and porridge, while the wealthy might enjoy exotic delicacies. However, even the rich couldn't escape the dangers of food poisoning due to lack of refrigeration and proper food handling practices. Employment opportunities were limited, and for many, daily life revolved around backbreaking labor with little reward. The constant threat of disease, accidents, and violence loomed over everyone, regardless of their social standing. Perhaps most challenging of all would be navigating the complex social and political landscape of ancient Rome. The strict hierarchy and the importance of patronage meant that your entire life could be determined by your connections and ability to curry favor with those in power. In the end, while ancient Rome was undoubtedly a remarkable civilization that left an indelible mark on history, it's clear that for the average person, daily life was a constant battle for survival. The comforts and freedoms we take for granted today were simply unimaginable in the world of ancient Rome. As we conclude our exploration of ancient China's challenges, let's shift our focus to another intriguing historical period. Our next destination takes us across continents and centuries to a time and place equally fraught with peril for the average person. Prepare yourself for a journey through. As we journey through time and space, let's turn our attention to another fascinating era in Asian history, medieval Japan. This period, spanning roughly from the 12th to the 16th centuries, was marked by significant cultural, political, and social developments that would shape the nation for centuries to come. From the rise of the samurai warrior class to the intricate system of feudal lords and their domains, medieval Japan presents a captivating tapestry of tradition, honor, and conflict. Join us as we explore the challenges and intricacies of daily life in this complex and often misunderstood period of Japanese history. As we journey back in time to medieval Japan, we find ourselves in a world vastly different from our own. The period known as the feudal era, spanning from the 12th to the 19th century, was a time of great social stratification, strict codes of conduct, and a way of life that would seem utterly alien to modern sensibilities. Let's begin our exploration with the social structure of medieval Japan. At the top of the hierarchy sat the emperor, a figure of immense symbolic importance but often with limited political power. Below the emperor were the shogun, daimyo, and samurai, forming the ruling warrior class. The shogun was the military dictator, wielding actual political control. Daimyo were powerful regional lords who controlled vast territories, while samurai served as their loyal retainers. These warriors lived by a strict code of honor known as bushido, which emphasized loyalty, duty, and self-discipline. Below the warrior class were the peasants, artisans, and merchants. Peasants, primarily rice farmers, made up the majority of the population. Despite their crucial role in society, they lived lives of hardship and poverty, toiling in the fields from dawn to dusk. Artisans such as blacksmiths, carpenters, and weavers were respected for their skills but ranked below farmers in the social hierarchy. Merchants, while often wealthy, were considered the lowest class due to their perceived lack of productivity. Now let's delve into the daily life of a typical peasant in medieval Japan. Your day would begin before sunrise, as you rise from your simple futon laid out on the tatami mat floor of your small, thatched-roof house. Breakfast would be a simple affair, consisting of rice, miso soup, and perhaps some pickled vegetables. After your meal, you would head out to the rice paddies, where you would spend most of your day. The work in the fields was backbreaking and relentless. You would wade through knee-deep water, planting or tending to the rice crops. The hot sun would beat down on you, and the humid air would make breathing difficult, but you couldn't rest, as your village's survival depended on a successful harvest. Your clothing would be simple and functional, a cotton kimono for women or a short jacket and trousers for men. You would likely go barefoot or wear simple straw sandals. Protection from the sun came in the form of wide-brimmed straw hats. As you worked, you would be constantly aware of your place in society. If a samurai were to pass by, you would be expected to bow low, showing utmost respect. Failure to do so could result in severe punishment, as samurai had the right to strike down disrespectful commoners on the spot. Midday would bring a brief respite for a simple lunch, often consisting of cold rice balls and perhaps some dried fish. Then it would be back to work until the sun began to set. Returning home, you might stop by the village well to draw water for cooking and cleaning. Your evening meal would be similar to breakfast: rice, miso soup, and vegetables. On rare occasions, you might have a small piece of fish or meat. After dinner, you might spend some time repairing tools or mending clothes by the light of an oil lamp. Entertainment was scarce, but you might gather with neighbors to share stories or sing folk songs. Your home would be sparsely furnished. The main room would serve multiple purposes: eating, sleeping, and living. At night, you would unroll your futon on the tatami mats. In winter, you might huddle around a small hearth called an irori for warmth. Bathing was a luxury not often afforded to peasants. You might visit a communal bathhouse once a week if you were lucky. More often, you would simply wash with a cloth from cold water drawn from a well or nearby stream. Education was limited for peasants. While some villages had temple schools where children could learn basic reading and writing, most peasant children were expected to work in the fields from a young age. Healthcare was primitive by modern standards. Many relied on traditional herbal remedies and folk medicine. Serious illnesses or injuries often proved fatal due to lack of medical knowledge and resources. Religion played a significant role in daily life. Most people practiced a combination of Shinto, the indigenous religion of Japan, and Buddhism. You might visit a local shrine or temple to offer prayers for a good harvest or protection from natural disasters. The changing seasons dictated much of peasant life. Spring brought the planting of rice, summer was filled with tending the crops, autumn saw the harvest, and winter was a time for repairing tools and preparing for the next growing season. Festivals provided rare moments of joy and respite from the hard work. These celebrations, often tied to religious observances or agricultural cycles, allowed peasants to momentarily forget their hardships and enjoy communal gatherings, music, and dance. However, life was not just about work and survival. Family and community were central to peasant life. Multiple generations often lived under one roof, with elders respected and cared for by their children and grandchildren. Marriage was typically arranged, with matches made based on practical considerations rather than romantic love. Women had few rights and were expected to be obedient to their husbands and in-laws. Despite the hardships, peasants found ways to endure and even find moments of beauty in their lives. The changing seasons, the blooming of cherry blossoms, the harvest moon, all were appreciated and celebrated in their own way. As we conclude our journey through medieval Japan, it's clear that life for the average person was far from easy. The rigid social structure, constant physical labor, and lack of modern conveniences made everyday existence a challenge. Yet, it was in this world that many of Japan's enduring cultural traditions were born and refined. The legacy of medieval Japan can still be seen today in the country's art, architecture, and social customs. While we might not wish to return to such a demanding way of life, understanding this period helps us appreciate the comforts of our modern world and the rich history that has shaped Japanese culture. As we conclude our journey through medieval Japan, it's clear that life during this period was far from the romanticized version often portrayed in popular culture. The rigid social hierarchy, constant threat of warfare, and harsh living conditions made everyday existence a challenge for most of the population. The samurai class, while revered in history, faced their own set of pressures and expectations. Their lives were governed by the strict code of Bushido, which demanded unwavering loyalty and the constant readiness to die for their lords. This intense devotion often came at the cost of personal freedom and family life. For the peasants and artisans, life was a constant struggle against poverty, disease, and natural disasters. The feudal system left them with little opportunity for advancement, and their fates were largely determined by the whims of their overlords. Even in times of relative peace, the threat of invasion from neighboring clans or foreign powers loomed large. The need for constant vigilance and military preparedness shaped every aspect of society, from architecture to social customs. As we drift off to sleep, let's reflect on how fortunate we are to live in an era of relative comfort and freedom. The challenges faced by those in medieval Japan serve as a stark reminder of how far human civilization has come and how much we often take for granted in our modern lives. As we leave behind the intricacies of ancient Chinese society, let's journey to another fascinating civilization. Our next destination takes us across continents and centuries to a place where pyramids pierced the sky and pharaohs ruled as living gods. Welcome to the mystifying world of ancient Egypt. As we journey through the annals of history, our next stop takes us to the heart of Mesoamerica. Here, we encounter a civilization known for its grandeur, brutality, and complex social structure, the Aztec Empire. Flourishing in the Valley of Mexico from the 14th to the 16th centuries, this formidable civilization left an indelible mark on world history. But what was life really like for the average person in this ancient society? Let's delve into the daily struggles and surprising realities of Aztec life. As we continue our journey through ancient civilizations, let's turn our attention to the Aztec Empire, a fascinating and complex society that flourished in central Mexico from the 14th to the 16th centuries. The daily life of the Aztecs was filled with intricate rituals, strict social hierarchies, and a deep connection to their religious beliefs. The Aztec day began early, usually before sunrise. The people would wake up and immediately start their daily routines, which varied depending on their social status and occupation. Let's explore the lives of different members of Aztec society, starting with the common people, or Mesopotamia. A typical Mesopotamia family lived in a small, one-room house called a cali. These modest dwellings were constructed of adobe bricks and had thatched roofs. The interior was sparsely furnished, with reed mats for sleeping and a central hearth for cooking and warmth. As the sun rose, the family would gather around the hearth for their first meal of the day. The main staple of the Aztec diet was maize, or corn. Women would spend a significant portion of their day preparing this essential food. They would grind dried corn kernels on a stone tool called a metate, then mix the resulting flour with water to create a dough called masa. This dough was then shaped into flat cakes called tlaxcali, which we know today as tortillas. While the women prepared food and tended to household chores, the men would set out for their daily work. Many Mesopotamia were farmers, cultivating crops such as maize, beans, squash, and chili peppers. They used innovative agricultural techniques like chinampas, artificial islands created in shallow lake beds, which allowed for year-round cultivation. Other common occupations included artisans, who crafted items like pottery, textiles, and jewelry, and merchants, who traded goods in the bustling marketplaces of Aztec cities. These markets, or tianquistli, were the heart of Aztec commerce and social interaction. They were organized by type of goods sold, with separate areas for food, clothing, tools, and luxury items. Children in Aztec society began contributing to the household from a young age. Boys would assist their fathers in farming or learning a trade, while girls helped their mothers with domestic tasks and learned skills like weaving and cooking. Education was highly valued in Aztec culture, and most children attended schools called talpachkali or kamakat, depending on their social status. As we move up the social hierarchy, we encounter the pachteca, or long-distance traders. These merchants played a crucial role in Aztec society, not only facilitating trade, but also serving as spies and diplomats for the empire. Their journeys could last for months or even years, as they traveled to distant lands to acquire exotic goods like jade, feathers, and cacao beans. The pachteca enjoyed a higher social status than the Mesopotamia and were permitted to wear finer clothing and jewelry. However, they were still considered commoners and were subject to strict regulations. For example, they were forbidden from displaying their wealth too openly, lest they incur the jealousy of the nobility. Speaking of nobility, let's examine the daily life of the Pipiltin, the Aztec noble class. These individuals lived in large, multi-room houses made of stone and adorned with colorful murals. Their days were filled with administrative duties, religious observances, and leisure activities befitting their status. Noble men often held important positions in the government or military. They would spend their days attending council meetings, overseeing public works projects, or planning military campaigns. In their free time, they might engage in activities like hunting, playing board games like paddle, or composing poetry. Noble women, while not directly involved in governance, played important roles in religious ceremonies and were responsible for managing their households. They supervised servants, organized feasts, and participated in elaborate weaving projects to create fine textiles for religious and ceremonial use. At the very top of Aztec society was the tlatani, or emperor. The daily life of the tlatani was a carefully choreographed series of rituals and responsibilities. He would rise before dawn to perform religious duties, offering blood sacrifices to the sun god Huitzilopochtli. Throughout the day, he would attend to matters of state, receiving ambassadors, hearing legal cases, and consulting with his advisors. The tlatani's every move was surrounded by elaborate ceremonies. He ate alone, served by a rotating staff of noblewomen, and his meals were accompanied by music and entertainment. When he appeared in public, he was carried on a litter and shielded from the sun by feather parasols. Commoners were forbidden from looking directly at him, instead averting their eyes and prostrating themselves in his presence. Religion permeated every aspect of Aztec daily life, regardless of social status. The Aztec calendar was filled with religious festivals and ceremonies, many of which required participation from all members of society. These events often involved fasting, bloodletting rituals, and human sacrifice, practices that were central to Aztec religious beliefs. One of the most important religious observances was the new fire ceremony, held every 52 years when two calendar cycles aligned. During this time, all fires in the empire were extinguished, and people anxiously awaited the priest's attempt to light a new fire on the chest of a sacrificial victim. If successful, it signaled the god's approval for the world to continue for another 52 years. As the sun began to set, Aztec families would gather once again for their evening meal. This was often the largest meal of the day and might include dishes like pozole, a hearty soup made with hominy and meat, or tamales filled with various ingredients. After the meal, families might spend time together telling stories or playing games before retiring for the night. It's important to note that while we've discussed typical daily activities, the Aztec way of life was far from monotonous. Their calendar was filled with numerous festivals and ceremonies that broke up the routine and brought the community together. These events ranged from small, local celebrations to massive, empire-wide observances that could last for days or even weeks. As we conclude our exploration of daily life in the Aztec Empire, we can see that it was a society of stark contrasts and complex social structures. From the humble Mesopotamia farmer tending his crops to the all-powerful Tlahtani ruling from his palace, each member of Aztec society played a vital role in maintaining the intricate tapestry of their civilization. The legacy of the Aztecs continues to fascinate us today, offering a window into a world both familiar and utterly alien to our modern sensibilities. As we conclude our journey through the Aztec Empire, it's clear that life in this ancient civilization was far from easy. The strict social hierarchy, demanding religious practices, and constant threat of warfare created a society where survival was a daily challenge. The Aztecs' complex system of tribute and taxation meant that even the most basic necessities could be hard to come by for the average citizen. The looming specter of human sacrifice cast a shadow over daily life, with the knowledge that anyone could potentially be chosen to appease the gods. Despite these hardships, the Aztecs managed to build a sophisticated society with impressive achievements in art, architecture, and agriculture. Their floating gardens, or chinampas, were marvels of engineering that allowed them to cultivate crops in difficult terrain. However, the arrival of Spanish conquistadors in the early 16th century marked the beginning of the end for the Aztec Empire. Internal conflicts, coupled with European diseases and superior weaponry, led to the fall of Tenochtitlan in 1521. As we drift off to sleep, let's reflect on how the challenges faced by the Aztecs remind us of the resilience of human societies throughout history. Their story serves as a testament to both the ingenuity and fragility of civilization, leaving us with a deeper appreciation for the comforts of our modern world. As we conclude our exploration of ancient China's challenges, let's shift our focus to another intriguing historical period. Our next destination takes us across continents and centuries, to a time of great upheaval and societal transformation. Prepare yourself for a journey through the complexities of medieval Europe. As we transition from the complexities of ancient China, let's journey to another fascinating civilization that has captivated historians for centuries: ancient Egypt. This land of pharaohs, pyramids, and mystical hieroglyphs holds secrets that continue to intrigue us to this day. But beyond the grandeur of its monuments and the allure of its mythology lies a daily reality that might surprise you. Just as in ancient China, life in ancient Egypt was far from easy for the average person. Let's explore why you, a modern individual, might struggle to survive even a single day in this ancient realm. As we journey back in time to ancient Egypt, we find ourselves immersed in a world vastly different from our own. The daily life of ancient Egyptians was shaped by the mighty Nile River, the scorching desert sun, and a complex social hierarchy that governed every aspect of existence. Let's begin with the average Egyptian's home. Unlike the grand stone temples and tombs we often associate with this civilization, most people lived in simple mud brick houses. These dwellings were practical, using readily available materials and designed to keep out the intense heat. A typical day for an Egyptian farmer would start before dawn. As the first rays of sunlight painted the sky, he would rise from his reed mat, which served as a bed. His wife would already be up, preparing a simple breakfast of bread and beer. Yes, beer was a staple of the Egyptian diet, consumed by adults and children alike. After a quick meal, our farmer would head out to the fields. The agricultural calendar was dictated by the Nile's annual flood cycle. During the inundation period, when the fields were submerged, farmers might work on community projects or repair tools. But for most of the year, they toiled in the fields, planting and harvesting crops like wheat, barley, and flax. The work was backbreaking and relentless. Under the watchful eye of overseers, farmers used simple tools like wooden plows and sickles. They would work from sunrise to sunset, with only a brief respite during the hottest part of the day. Meanwhile, in the household, the farmer's wife would be engaged in a variety of tasks. She might grind grain into flour, bake bread, brew beer, or weave linen cloth. Children would help with chores or, if the family could afford it, attend a basic school to learn reading and writing. In the cities, life took on a different rhythm. Craftsmen and artisans would be busy in their workshops, creating everything from pottery and furniture to intricate jewelry. The streets would be bustling with traders, scribes hurrying to and from government offices, and priests making their way to the temples. Speaking of temples, religion played a central role in Egyptian daily life. People would often stop at small shrines to make offerings or say prayers as they went about their day. Major festivals punctuated the calendar, providing rare days of rest and celebration for the common people. But let's not forget the stark reality of health and hygiene in ancient Egypt. While they had a surprisingly advanced understanding of medicine for their time, life expectancy was short. Many children didn't survive to adulthood, and adults faced numerous health challenges. Parasitic diseases were rampant due to the close proximity to the Nile. Tooth decay was common, exacerbated by the grit that inevitably made its way into bread from stone-ground flour. Eye infections were also widespread, aggravated by the harsh desert environment. Despite these challenges, Egyptians took pride in their personal appearance. Both men and women used kohl around their eyes, which served not just as a cosmetic, but also as protection against the sun's glare. They also used various oils and perfumes to combat body odor and protect their skin from the dry climate. Clothing was simple but practical. Men typically wore a linen kilt called a shendit, while women wore a straight dress known as a calisseris. Children often went naked until puberty. The wealthy might have more elaborate garments, but even they favored linen for its coolness and ease of cleaning. As the day drew to a close, families would gather for the main meal. This usually consisted of bread, vegetables, and perhaps some fish. Meat was a luxury reserved for special occasions or the upper classes. After dinner, people might socialize with neighbors, tell stories, or play simple board games like Senate. It's worth noting that while we often focus on the lives of pharaohs and nobles, they represented a tiny fraction of Egyptian society. The vast majority of people were farmers, laborers, and craftsmen, living lives of hard work and simple pleasures. Yet, despite the hardships, there was a strong sense of community and purpose. Egyptians believed in Ma'at, the concept of balance and justice in all things. This philosophy permeated their daily lives, influencing how they treated each other and approached their work. As night fell, most Egyptians would retire early, ready to rest before another day of labor. They slept on simple reed mats or low wooden beds, perhaps with a headdress to protect their elaborate hairstyles. It's important to remember that life in ancient Egypt wasn't static. Over the 3,000 years of pharaonic history, daily life evolved and changed. Technological advancements, foreign influences, and shifting political landscapes all left their mark on the rhythms of Egyptian life. For instance, the introduction of bronze tools around 3150 BCE revolutionized agriculture and craftsmanship. Later, during the New Kingdom period, increased trade brought new luxuries and ideas from abroad, influencing everything from fashion to cuisine. Despite these changes, certain aspects of Egyptian daily life remained remarkably consistent. The Nile's annual flood continued to shape the agricultural calendar. The belief in an afterlife influenced how people approached their daily tasks, with many viewing their earthly work as preparation for eternity. As we conclude our exploration of daily life in ancient Egypt, we're left with a picture of a society that was both familiar and alien to our modern eye. The struggles of making a living, raising a family, and finding meaning in one's work are timeless human experiences. Yet the specific context of ancient Egyptian culture, its gods, its pharaohs, its monuments, created a unique world that continues to fascinate us millennia later. As we conclude our journey through ancient Egypt, it's clear that life in this ancient civilization was far from the glamorous depictions we often see in movies. The average person's existence was filled with hardship, labor, and constant threats to their health and well-being. From the oppressive heat and ever-present dust to the dangers lurking in the Nile, daily life was a constant struggle. The rigid social hierarchy meant that most people had little hope of improving their circumstances, toiling endlessly under the watchful eyes of taskmasters and officials. Disease was rampant, with parasites and infections spreading easily due to poor sanitation and limited medical knowledge. The average lifespan was short, with many succumbing to illness or injury long before reaching old age. While the ancient Egyptians made remarkable achievements in architecture, art, and writing, these advancements came at a great cost to the common people. The construction of monumental structures like the pyramids required immense labor and countless lives. In retrospect, the idea of living in ancient Egypt may seem romantic or exciting, but the reality was far harsher. Our modern comforts, medical knowledge, and social freedoms make our lives incomparably easier than those of our ancient counterparts. As we drift off to sleep, let's appreciate the relative ease and safety of our modern world. As we conclude our exploration of ancient China's challenges, let's shift our focus to another fascinating civilization. We'll now journey across time and continents to uncover the hidden perils of daily life in medieval Europe. Prepare yourself for a glimpse into a world both familiar and shockingly different from our own. As we journey through time, let's explore another fascinating era that might just lull you into a peaceful slumber. We're about to delve into the world of colonial America, a period spanning roughly 2 centuries from the early 1600s to the late 1700s. Picture a land of untamed wilderness, fledgling settlements, and the birth of a new nation. From the hardships of early settlers to the complexities of colonial society, we'll uncover why you might not have survived a day in this pivotal time of American history. As we journey through time, let's explore the daily life in colonial America, a period spanning from the early 17th century to the late 18th century. This era was marked by hardship, determination, and the gradual formation of a unique American identity. Colonial life varied greatly depending on the region, social status, and time period. However, there were common threads that bound the experiences of many colonists together. Let's begin with the most fundamental aspect of daily life, housing. In the early days of colonization, settlers often lived in crude, temporary shelters. These might be simple lean-tos made of tree branches and leaves, or dugouts carved into hillsides. As colonies became more established, log cabins became the norm for many families. These log cabins were typically one-room structures with a dirt floor and a single window. The roof was often made of bark or hand-split wooden shingles. A large fireplace dominated one wall, serving as both a heat source and a cooking area. Families would sleep, eat, and conduct all indoor activities in this single room. As prosperity grew, some colonists built more substantial homes. In New England, the salt box house became popular. This style featured a long, pitched roof that sloped down to the back, creating a lean-to addition. In the South, plantation owners constructed grand homes, while their enslaved workers lived in cramped, poorly constructed cabins. Regardless of the type of dwelling, colonial homes were sparsely furnished. Most furniture was handmade and multifunctional. A table might serve for dining, food preparation, and as a desk for writing or studying. Beds were often shared, with multiple children sleeping together for warmth and space efficiency. Now let's turn our attention to the daily routine of a typical colonial family. The day began early, often before sunrise. The first task was to rekindle the fire in the hearth, which had been banked overnight to preserve embers. Once the fire was blazing, the women of the household would begin preparing breakfast. This might consist of cornmeal mush, known as hasty pudding or Johnny cakes, a type of cornmeal flatbread. These would be served with butter, molasses, or maple syrup if available. After breakfast, the family would disperse to their various tasks. Men and older boys would head to the fields or workshops, while women and girls remained at home to tackle domestic chores. Children as young as 6 or 7 were expected to contribute to the household labor. For farmers, which comprised the majority of colonists, the workday was long and physically demanding. They plowed fields, planted crops, tended to livestock, and repaired fences and farm equipment. The specific tasks varied with the seasons, but there was always work to be done. Women's work was equally demanding, if less visible. They were responsible for cooking, cleaning, childcare, and a host of other domestic tasks. This included spinning yarn, weaving cloth, sewing clothes, preserving food, and making candles and soap. One of the most time-consuming tasks for colonial women was laundry. Without running water or washing machines, this chore could take an entire day. Clothes were scrubbed by hand on washboards, boiled in large kettles over an open fire, then hung to dry. Children's lives were far different from those of modern youth. Education was valued, particularly in New England, but schooling often took a backseat to practical skills and labor. Boys typically learned their father's trade, while girls were trained in household management. In farming communities, children might be responsible for tasks such as feeding chickens, gathering eggs, or helping to plant and harvest crops. In towns, they might assist in family businesses or be apprenticed to learn a trade. Meal times provided a brief respite from labor. The midday meal or dinner was typically the largest of the day. It might consist of a stew or soup, bread, and vegetables from the garden. Meat was not eaten daily by most colonists, but was more common on Sundays or special occasions. As evening approached, families would gather again for a light supper. This might be leftovers from dinner or simple fare like bread and cheese. After the meal, there might be time for mending clothes, reading, if books were available, and family members were literate or telling stories. Bedtime came early as most activities ceased when darkness fell. Candles and oil lamps were used sparingly due to their expense. Most colonists went asleep shortly after sunset and rose with the dawn, following the natural rhythms of daylight. While this routine might seem monotonous, it was punctuated by community events and religious observances. The Sabbath was strictly observed in most colonies, particularly in New England. Sundays were devoted to church services and rest from labor. Other communal activities included barn raisings, where neighbors would gather to help construct a new barn, and quilting bees, where women would socialize while working together on quilts. These events served both practical and social purposes, strengthening community bonds. It's important to note that this description primarily applies to free colonists. The daily lives of enslaved Africans and indentured servants were markedly different and far harsher. They faced long hours of grueling labor, poor living conditions, and little to no personal freedom. As the colonial period progressed, life gradually became more comfortable for many settlers. Towns grew larger, trade increased, and consumer goods became more readily available. By the mid-18th century, some colonists were able to enjoy luxuries like tea, coffee, and imported textiles. However, even as material conditions improved, the fundamental rhythms of colonial life remained tied to the seasons and the demands of agriculture. The hard work, self-reliance, and community spirit that characterized early colonial life would continue to shape American culture long after the colonial era had ended. As we reflect on daily life in colonial America, we're reminded of the stark contrasts with our modern existence. The physical hardships, limited technology, and constant labor that define colonial life are far removed from our current experiences. Yet in many ways, the values and social structures established during this period continue to influence American society today. As we conclude our journey through colonial America, it's clear that life in this era was far from the romanticized version often portrayed in popular culture. The harsh realities of daily existence, from the constant threat of disease to the backbreaking labor required just to survive, paint a picture of a time that most of us would find unbearable. The social structures and expectations of the time would be equally challenging for modern individuals to navigate. The rigid class system, limited opportunities for education and advancement, and the stark gender roles would feel oppressive and confining to those accustomed to contemporary freedoms. Moreover, the political landscape of colonial America was fraught with tension and uncertainty. The growing dissatisfaction with British rule, which would eventually lead to the American Revolution, created an atmosphere of unease and potential conflict that permeated daily life. In reflecting on this period, we can appreciate the immense progress that has been made in areas such as medicine, technology, and social equality. While colonial America laid the groundwork for the nation we know today, it's clear that the comforts and freedoms we enjoy now were hard-won over centuries of struggle and advancement. As you drift off to sleep, consider how fortunate we are to live in an age where many of the hardships faced by our colonial ancestors are now distant memories, preserved only in the pages of history books and the echoes of time. As we conclude our journey through ancient China, let's shift our focus to another fascinating civilization. We'll now explore the intricacies of life in ancient Egypt, where pharaohs ruled supreme and the Nile River was the lifeblood of society. Prepare to uncover the challenges and peculiarities of daily existence along the banks of this legendary waterway. As we leave behind the ancient lands of China, our journey through history takes us to another fascinating civilization, the Byzantine Empire. This long-lasting realm, often overlooked in modern discussions, played a crucial role in shaping the medieval world. Straddling the crossroads of Europe and Asia, the Byzantine Empire was a melting pot of cultures, religions, and political intrigue. In the next segment, we'll explore why life in this empire was far from the idyllic existence some might imagine, and why you, dear listener, might find survival there quite challenging. As we journey through the annals of history, let's turn our attention to the Byzantine Empire, a realm that bridged the ancient world and the Middle Ages. Imagine yourself transported to Constantinople, the beating heart of this vast empire, where daily life was a tapestry of tradition, faith, and imperial grandeur. The Byzantine day typically began at dawn, with the streets of Constantinople slowly coming to life. The air would be filled with the smell of freshly baked bread and the sound of church bells calling the faithful to morning prayers. For the average Byzantine citizen, religion played a central role in daily life. The Orthodox Christian faith was not just a belief system, but a way of life that permeated every aspect of society. Churches and monasteries dotted the landscape, serving as centers of worship, learning, and community gathering. In the mornings, many Byzantines would start their day with a visit to the local church for morning prayers. The elaborate rituals and the smell of incense would create an atmosphere of reverence and spiritual connection. After prayers, people would go about their daily business. The streets of Constantinople would bustle with activity as merchants opened their shops, artisans began their crafts, and government officials made their way to the imperial palace. The Byzantine economy was highly diverse and sophisticated. Skilled craftsmen produced exquisite goods such as silk textiles, jewelry, and intricate mosaics. These items were not only prized within the empire, but were also sought after by traders from distant lands. In the markets, you would find a dizzying array of goods from across the known world. Spices from India, furs from Russia, and exotic fruits from Africa would be displayed alongside local produce and crafts. The air would be filled with the chatter of haggling in various languages, reflecting the cosmopolitan nature of the empire. Education was highly valued in Byzantine society, especially among the upper classes. Children of wealthy families would receive instruction in subjects such as grammar, rhetoric, and philosophy. The works of ancient Greek and Roman authors were studied alongside Christian texts, creating a unique blend of classical and Christian learning. For the majority of the population, however, formal education was limited. Most children would learn practical skills from their parents or through apprenticeships. Boys might learn their father's trade, while girls were typically taught household management and domestic skills. The Byzantine legal system was based on Roman law, but with significant modifications over time. Courts were established to handle various types of disputes, and judges were appointed by the emperor. The concept of equality before the law was theoretically upheld, although in practice, social status often influenced legal outcomes. As midday approached, many Byzantines would take a break from their work for a light meal. This might consist of bread, cheese, olives, and perhaps some fish or vegetables. Wine, often diluted with water, was the common beverage for all social classes. In the afternoon, work would resume, but at a more leisurely pace. The hot Mediterranean climate often necessitated a period of rest or lighter activities during the warmest part of the day. For the wealthy elite, afternoons might be spent in leisure pursuits such as attending the hippodrome for chariot races, visiting public baths, or engaging in intellectual discussions in private salons. The hippodrome was not just a venue for entertainment, but also a place of great political significance. It was here that the emperor would make public appearances, and where the populace could voice their opinions on matters of state, sometimes leading to riots or political upheavals. As evening approached, families would gather for the main meal of the day. Byzantine cuisine was a blend of Greek, Roman, and Eastern influences. A typical meal might include bread, various vegetables, fish or meat for those who could afford it, and fruits for dessert. Meals were often social occasions, with extended family and friends gathering to share food and conversation. After dinner, wealthier Byzantines might engage in entertainment such as music, dance, or theatrical performances. For the majority, however, evenings were spent in quieter pursuits. Storytelling was a popular pastime, with tales of saints, heroes, and historical figures being passed down through generations. As night fell, the streets of Constantinople would gradually quiet down. The city would be illuminated by oil lamps and torches, creating a flickering, mysterious atmosphere. Night watchmen would patrol the streets, ensuring order and watching for fires, which were a constant threat in the densely populated city. Before retiring for the night, many Byzantines would engage in evening prayers. The rhythm of religious observances provided a comforting structure to daily life, marking the passage of time and reinforcing the spiritual foundations of Byzantine society. It's important to note that daily life in the Byzantine Empire varied greatly depending on one's social status and location. While we focused primarily on urban life in Constantinople, the experiences of rural farmers, soldiers on the frontier, or monks in remote monasteries would have been markedly different. The Byzantine Empire's complex bureaucracy and elaborate court rituals also played a significant role in shaping daily life, especially for those in positions of power. The emperor was seen as God's representative on earth, and the imperial court was a world of intrigue, ceremony, and carefully orchestrated displays of power. Despite the challenges and inequalities of Byzantine society, it's worth noting that the empire provided a level of stability and cultural continuity that was rare in the medieval world. The preservation and transmission of classical knowledge, the development of a sophisticated legal system, and the creation of magnificent works of art and architecture all contributed to a rich cultural legacy that continues to influence our world today. As we drift off to sleep, imagine the echoes of Byzantine life, the chants of priests, the clamor of markets, the discussions of scholars, and the whispered prayers of the faithful. This was a world both familiar and alien, where ancient traditions met new challenges, and where the daily rhythms of life played out against a backdrop of imperial splendor and divine mystery. As we conclude our exploration of the Byzantine Empire, it's important to reflect on its lasting impact. The empire's influence extended far beyond its borders, shaping the cultural and political landscape of medieval Europe and the Middle East for centuries to come. The Byzantine Empire's preservation of classical knowledge played a crucial role in the eventual Renaissance in Western Europe. Its legal codes, the Corpus Juris Civilis, became the basis for many modern legal systems. The empire's artistic and architectural achievements, such as the Hagia Sophia, continue to inspire awe and admiration to this day. However, the fall of Constantinople in 1453 marked the end of an era. The Ottoman conquest not only brought about the demise of the Byzantine Empire, but also closed the chapter on the last vestiges of the Roman Empire that had endured for over a millennium. The legacy of Byzantium lives on in the Orthodox Christian faith, which spread throughout Eastern Europe and Russia. The empire's diplomatic practices, military strategies, and administrative systems influenced many subsequent empires and nations. In retrospect, the Byzantine Empire stands as a testament to human resilience and adaptability. It weathered numerous storms, from barbarian invasions to internal strife, and managed to preserve and evolve a rich cultural heritage that continues to fascinate historians and laypeople alike. As we drift off to sleep, let us ponder the echoes of this great civilization that still resonate in our world today, from the domes of churches to the intricacies of legal codes, reminding us of the enduring impact of history on our modern lives. As we conclude our exploration of ancient China's challenges, let's shift our focus to another fascinating civilization. Our journey through history continues, taking us to a different time and place where survival was equally demanding. Prepare yourself for a new set of historical hurdles as we delve into our next topic. As we journey through the annals of history, our next destination takes us to the majestic heights of the Andes Mountains. Here, nestled among the clouds and rugged peaks, we encounter one of the most fascinating civilizations of pre-Columbian America, the Inca Empire. Known for their remarkable engineering feats, complex social structure, and vast territorial expanse, the Incas left an indelible mark on South American history. Let's delve into the world of this mountain empire and explore why surviving in their society might have been more challenging than you'd expect. As we journey through the annals of history, let's turn our attention to the fascinating daily life of the Inca Empire. This ancient civilization, which flourished in the Andean region of South America from the 13th to the 16th centuries, had a complex social structure and a unique way of life that might surprise you. The Inca Empire, known as Tawantinsuyu in their native Quechua language, was a highly organized society. At its peak, it stretched from modern-day Ecuador to Chile, encompassing parts of Peru, Bolivia, and Argentina. The daily life of the Inca people was governed by strict rules and customs, all centered around their devotion to the sun god, Inti. Let's begin with the typical day of an Inca commoner. Rising with the sun, they would start their day with a simple breakfast of chunu, a freeze-dried potato, and perhaps some quinoa. The Inca diet was primarily vegetarian, with meat being a rare luxury reserved for special occasions or the nobility. After their morning meal, men would head to the fields or construction sites, while women typically stayed closer to home, tending to household chores and weaving. The Inca were master agriculturalists, developing advanced techniques to farm in the challenging Andean terrain. They created an intricate system of terraces, known as Andes, which allowed them to cultivate crops at various altitudes. One of the most remarkable aspects of Inca daily life was their system of labor taxation called mita. Under this system, all able-bodied adults were required to work for the state for a certain number of days each year. This could involve anything from farming state lands to building roads or serving in the military. Speaking of roads, the Inca road system was a marvel of ancient engineering. Known as Nian, or the Royal Road, it stretched for over 39,000 kilometers, connecting the far reaches of the empire. Chasquis, or relay runners, would use these roads to carry messages and small goods across vast distances with incredible speed. Education in the Inca Empire was a privilege reserved primarily for the nobility. Young nobles would attend the Yachuasi, or House of Knowledge, where they learned about Inca history, religion, and the art of quipu, a system of knotted cords used for record-keeping and communication. For the common people, education was more practical and passed down through generations. Children learned by observing and assisting their parents in daily tasks. By the age of 5, most Inca children were already contributing to household chores and learning skills that would serve them in adulthood. Religion played a central role in Inca daily life. The people worshipped the pantheon of gods, with Inti, the sun god, at its head. Religious ceremonies were frequent and often involved offerings of food, textiles, and sometimes even human sacrifices during major festivals. One of the most important religious events was the Inti Raymi, or Festival of the Sun. Celebrated at the winter solstice in June, it involved elaborate ceremonies, feasting, and animal sacrifices to ensure a good harvest in the coming year. The Inca had a unique concept of time, dividing the year into 12 lunar months. Each month had its own festival or ritual, often related to agricultural cycles. These celebrations were an integral part of Inca daily life, providing a break from the routine and reinforcing social bonds. Clothing in the Inca Empire was not just for practicality, but also a marker of social status. The quality and designs of textiles indicated one's place in society. Common people wore simple, unadorned clothing made from llama or alpaca wool, while the nobility adorned themselves with finely woven garments decorated with geometric patterns and bright colors. The Inca were skilled weavers, and textile production was a crucial part of daily life, especially for women. They used a variety of natural dyes to create vibrant colors, and their textiles were so highly valued that they were often used as a form of currency or diplomatic gifts. Housing in the Inca Empire varied depending on social status and location. In rural areas, commoners lived in simple, single-room dwellings made of stone or adobe with thatched roofs. In urban centers, multi-room compounds housed extended families, with separate areas for sleeping, cooking, and storage. The most impressive Inca structures were reserved for religious and administrative purposes. Temples, palaces, and fortresses were built using massive stone blocks fitted together with incredible precision, without the use of mortar. The famous city of Machu Picchu is a testament to the Incas' architectural prowess. Health and medicine were important aspects of Inca daily life. They had a sophisticated understanding of herbs and their medicinal properties. Inca doctors, known as Hampacamiot, used a combination of practical treatments and spiritual healing to care for the sick. One interesting medical practice was trepanation, a surgical procedure involving the removal of a piece of the skull. Evidence suggests that many patients survived this procedure, indicating a high level of medical skill among Inca surgeons. The Inca had a unique approach to justice and maintaining social order. Their legal system was based on three simple principles: Amasua, do not steal; Amalula, do not lie; and Amaquela, do not be lazy. Violations of these principles were met with severe punishments, including death for serious offenses. Despite the strictness of their laws, the Inca also had a system of social welfare. The elderly, sick, and disabled were cared for by the state, ensuring that no one in the empire went hungry or without shelter. As the day drew to a close, Inca families would gather for their evening meal. This was typically a hearty stew called lacro, made with potatoes, corn, and sometimes meat. After dinner, people might engage in storytelling or music before retiring for the night. Music and dance were integral parts of Inca culture, used in both religious ceremonies and everyday entertainment. They played a variety of instruments, including panpipes, flutes, and drums. The haunting melodies of Andean music that we hear today have their roots in these ancient traditions. As night fell over the Inca Empire, most people would retire to sleep, resting on simple platforms covered with woven mats and blankets. The next day would bring another cycle of work, worship, and community life in this complex and fascinating civilization. The daily life of the Inca, with its blend of strict organization and rich cultural traditions, offers us a glimpse into a world both familiar and alien. Their achievements in agriculture, engineering, and social organization continue to astound us, even as we drift off to sleep, imagining the echoes of ancient panpipes in the misty Andean mountains. As we conclude our journey through the Inca Empire, it's clear that surviving in this ancient civilization would have been a formidable challenge for modern individuals. The Inca's complex social structure, demanding agricultural practices, and harsh living conditions all contributed to a way of life vastly different from our own. One of the most striking aspects of Inca society was their remarkable engineering feats. The construction of Machu Picchu, with its precisely cut stone blocks fitting together without mortar, remains a testament to their ingenuity. However, for the average Inca citizen, life revolved around backbreaking labor and strict adherence to social norms. The empire's extensive road system, spanning over 39,000 kilometers, facilitated trade and communication, but also served as a means of control for the ruling class. Messengers known as chasquis would run relay style along these roads, carrying information and goods across vast distances. Religion played a central role in Inca life, with the sun god Inti being of paramount importance. Human sacrifices, while not as common as in some other Mesoamerican cultures, were still practiced during significant events or times of crisis. The fall of the Inca Empire to Spanish conquistadors in the 16th century marked the end of this remarkable civilization. However, their legacy lives on in the ruins, artifacts, and cultural practices that have survived to this day. As we drift off to sleep, let's reflect on the resilience and ingenuity of the Inca people, who built an empire that continues to captivate our imagination centuries later. As we conclude our exploration of ancient China's challenges, let's shift our focus to another fascinating civilization. We'll now journey across time and space to uncover the intricacies of daily life in medieval Europe, where survival was equally demanding, albeit in different ways. As we leave behind the intricacies of ancient China, let's journey westward and backward in time to Tudor England. This era, spanning from 1485 to 1603, was a period of great change and transformation for the British Isles. From the tumultuous reign of Henry VII to the golden age of Elizabeth I, Tudor England saw religious upheaval, economic growth, and cultural flourishing. But what was daily life really like for the average person during this time? Let's explore why you might not have survived a day in Tudor England. As we journey through time, let's pause in the bustling streets of Tudor England, where life was far from the romanticized tales we often hear. The Tudor period, spanning from 1485 to 1603, was a time of significant change, but also one of hardship and struggle for the average person. Imagine waking up in a small, cramped house in London during the 16th century. The first thing you'd notice is the smell. With no proper sewage system, the streets were often filled with human waste and garbage. Chamber pots were emptied directly onto the streets, creating a pungent aroma that permeated every corner of the city. Your day would start early around dawn. If you were lucky enough to have a window, it would likely be covered with a thin cloth or animal skin, offering little protection from the elements. Glass windows were a luxury reserved for the wealthy. Breakfast, if you could afford it, would be a simple affair. Perhaps some bread and ale, which was safer to drink than water due to the brewing process killing harmful bacteria. The poorest might skip breakfast altogether, saving their meager resources for a single meal later in the day. Work would begin soon after sunrise. If you were a craftsman or laborer, you'd head to your workshop or the field. Women might tend to household chores or assist in family businesses. Children as young as 7 were often expected to contribute to the family's income. The streets of Tudor towns were narrow and crowded, with upper stories of buildings jutting out over the lower levels. This created dark, claustrophobic spaces where diseases could easily spread. The lack of proper sanitation meant that outbreaks of plague and other illnesses were common and devastating. Speaking of health, medical knowledge in Tudor England was rudimentary at best. Treatments often involved bloodletting, the use of leeches, or the application of various herbal remedies. The concept of germs was unknown, and many illnesses were attributed to an imbalance of bodily humors or even supernatural causes. If you fell ill, your chances of survival were slim. The average life expectancy was around 35 years, though this figure was heavily skewed by high infant mortality rates. If you made it to adulthood, you might live into your 50s or 60s, but you'd likely suffer from various ailments along the way. Education was a privilege reserved for the wealthy and to some extent the middle classes. Most common people were illiterate, learning their trade through apprenticeships rather than formal schooling. Books were expensive and rare, making knowledge a precious commodity. The class system in Tudor England was rigid and all-encompassing. Your birth determined your social status, and there was little opportunity for advancement. The nobility lived lives of relative luxury, while the vast majority of people struggled to make ends meet. Religion played a central role in Tudor life, especially following the English Reformation under Henry VII. The shift from Catholicism to Protestantism caused significant social upheaval, and your religious beliefs could determine your fate. Heresy was punishable by death, often in gruesome public executions. Speaking of public spectacles, entertainment in Tudor England was a far cry from our modern diversions. Popular pastimes included bear baiting, where a chained bear would fight against a pack of dogs, and public executions, which drew large crowds. Theater was becoming increasingly popular, with playwrights like Shakespeare beginning to make their mark. Food for the average person was simple and often monotonous. Bread was a staple, along with pottage, a thick soup made from whatever vegetables were available. Meat was a luxury for most, consumed sparingly if at all. The wealthy, however, enjoyed elaborate feasts with multiple courses and exotic ingredients. Clothing in Tudor England was strictly regulated by sumptuary laws, which dictated what people could wear based on their social status. The poor wore simple, rough fabrics in muted colors, while the wealthy adorned themselves in silks, velvets, and bright hues. Your attire was an immediate indicator of your place in society. Personal hygiene was different from our modern standards. Bathing was infrequent, as it was believed that water could carry disease. Instead, people relied on changing their linen undergarments to stay clean. The resulting body odor was masked with strong perfumes and herbs. Crime and punishment were harsh realities of Tudor life. Petty theft could result in severe punishments, including public whipping or time in the stocks. More serious offenses often led to execution, with methods ranging from hanging to burning at the stake for particularly heinous crimes. The Tudor period saw significant advancements in naval technology and exploration. However, for the average person, travel was limited and dangerous. Roads were poor and often plagued by highwaymen. Most people lived and died within a few miles of where they were born. As night fell, the streets of Tudor towns became dark and dangerous. With no street lighting, people relied on lanterns or torches to navigate. Many chose to stay indoors after sunset, as the night brought increased risks of crime and accidents. Before bed, you might gather around the hearth with your family, sharing stories or engaging in simple crafts like sewing or whittling. Candles, being expensive, were used sparingly, so most activities ceased when daylight faded. As you lay down to sleep on your straw mattress, possibly shared with several family members, you'd likely reflect on the day's toils and worry about tomorrow's challenges. life in Tudor England was a constant struggle for survival, far removed from the romantic notions often portrayed in modern media. This glimpse into daily life in Tudor England reveals a world that was harsh, unsanitary, and often brutal. Yet, it was also a time of great change and the beginnings of many aspects of modern society. As we drift off to sleep, let's be grateful for the comforts and advancements we enjoy today, while remembering the resilience of those who came before us. As we conclude our journey through Tudor England, it's clear that life in this era was far from the romanticized version often portrayed in media. The stark realities of daily existence would have been challenging for even the hardiest modern individual. From the ever-present threat of disease and the harsh punishments for even minor infractions, to the rigid social hierarchy and limited opportunities for advancement, Tudor England was a world apart from our own. The constant religious turmoil and political instability added an extra layer of uncertainty to everyday life. While we may admire the grand castles and elaborate costumes of the Tudor nobility, it's important to remember that for the vast majority of people, life was a constant struggle for survival. The lack of modern amenities, poor sanitation, and limited medical knowledge meant that even simple ailments could prove fatal. Perhaps the most striking difference between Tudor times and our own is the concept of individual rights and freedoms. In a society where your fate was largely determined by birth and where questioning authority could lead to severe consequences, the idea of personal liberty as we know it today was virtually non-existent. As we drift off to sleep, let's be grateful for the progress we've made since those tumultuous times, while also reflecting on the resilience of those who lived through such challenging circumstances. As we conclude our exploration of ancient China, let's shift our focus to another fascinating civilization. We'll now journey across time and space to uncover the mysteries and challenges of life in ancient Egypt. Prepare to discover why surviving in this iconic desert kingdom was no easy feat. As we journey through the annals of history, our next stop takes us to the opulent and complex world of Mughal India. This era, spanning from the 16th to the 19th centuries, was marked by a fascinating blend of cultural influences, architectural marvels, and political intrigue. The Mughal Empire, founded by Babur in 1526, would go on to become one of the most powerful and prosperous dynasties in Indian history. But what was daily life really like during this period? Let's explore the challenges and peculiarities that would make survival in Mughal India a daunting prospect for the modern individual. As we journey through time and space, let us now turn our attention to the vast and intricate world of Mughal India. This powerful empire, which lasted from the 16th to the 19th centuries, was a tapestry of cultural richness, architectural marvels, and complex social structures. Let's delve into the daily life of those who lived under the rule of the Mughal emperors. The Mughal Empire at its peak encompassed much of the Indian subcontinent and parts of present-day Afghanistan. Its capital, initially at Agra and later moved to Delhi, was a bustling center of politics, trade, and culture. The empire was known for its efficient administration, elaborate court life, and patronage of the arts. At the top of the social hierarchy sat the emperor, revered as the absolute ruler and often styled as the shadow of God on earth. The emperor's daily routine was a carefully orchestrated affair, with every moment planned to reinforce his divine right to rule. Let's imagine a typical day in the life of Emperor Akbar, one of the most renowned Mughal rulers. Dawn would break over the imperial palace, and Akbar would rise early, often before sunrise. His day would begin with prayer and meditation, followed by a light breakfast. The emperor would then proceed to the Diwan-i-Khas, or hall of private audience, where he would meet with his closest advisors and ministers to discuss matters of state. These meetings could last for hours, covering topics ranging from military strategy to economic policies. Akbar was known for his interest in religious discussions and would often engage in debates with scholars from various faiths, promoting his vision of religious tolerance and unity. By midday, the emperor would move to the Diwan-i-Am, or hall of public audience, where he would hear petitions from common citizens and dispense justice. This practice, known as Jaraka Darshan, allowed even the humblest subjects to seek the emperor's intervention in their affairs. While the emperor's life was one of luxury and power, the vast majority of the population lived much simpler lives. Let's explore the daily routines of different social classes within Mughal society. For the nobility and wealthy merchants, life in Mughal India was one of opulence and refinement. Their homes were often sprawling mansions or havelis, with intricate architectural details and lush gardens. A typical day for a nobleman might begin with prayers, followed by a leisurely breakfast of rich foods like kebabs, biryanis, and sweetmeats. The men of these upper classes would spend their mornings attending to business matters or engaging in scholarly pursuits. Many were patrons of the arts, commissioning works from poets, musicians, and artists. Afternoons might be devoted to leisure activities such as hunting, polo, or chess. Women of the nobility, while often secluded in the zanana or women's quarters, wielded considerable influence behind the scenes. They managed household affairs, oversaw the education of children, and some even engaged in business ventures or artistic pursuits. For the urban middle class, which included artisans, shopkeepers, and lower-level officials, life was a balance between work and adherence to social and religious customs. A craftsman, for instance, might rise at dawn for prayers before heading to his workshop. The streets of Mughal cities would come alive with the sounds of hammering, weaving, and the calls of street vendors. Markets bustled with activity as people bought and sold goods ranging from spices and textiles to precious gems and metalwork. Education was highly valued in Mughal society, with madrasas or schools attached to mosques providing instruction in subjects like literature, mathematics, and Islamic law. Children from middle-class families would often attend these schools, memorizing texts and engaging in scholarly debates. For the vast majority of the population, however, life was far less comfortable. Peasants and laborers in rural areas would rise before dawn to work in the fields. Their days were long and arduous, tilling the soil, planting crops, and tending to livestock. The agricultural calendar dictated the rhythm of rural life, with different seasons bringing various tasks and challenges. During the monsoon season, farmers would work tirelessly to plant rice and other crops, while the dry season might be devoted to harvesting and preparing for the next planting cycle. In both urban and rural areas, the caste system played a significant role in determining one's occupation and social status. While the Mughal rulers themselves were of Central Asian origin and not part of the Hindu caste system, they largely maintained existing social structures. At the bottom of the social hierarchy were the untouchables, who performed tasks considered impure by higher castes. Their daily lives were marked by discrimination and hardship, with limited access to education, religious institutions, and economic opportunities. Despite these social divisions, Mughal India was a place of remarkable cultural synthesis. The empire's Persian-influenced court culture blended with indigenous Indian traditions, resulting in unique art forms, architectural styles, and culinary traditions that continue to influence the region to this day. One aspect of daily life that transcended social boundaries was the importance of food and communal dining. Mughal cuisine, with its rich flavors and elaborate preparation methods, became renowned throughout the empire and beyond. Even humble households would take pride in preparing special dishes for festivals and celebrations. As the day would draw to a close, the rhythms of life in Mughal India would shift. In cities, the call to evening prayer would echo from mosques, signaling the end of the workday for many. Families would gather for the evening meal, often sharing stories and discussing the day's events. In the imperial court, evenings were often a time for entertainment. Musicians, dancers, and poets would perform for the emperor and his guests, showcasing the rich cultural traditions of the empire. These gatherings were not merely for amusement, but served as important venues for diplomatic negotiations and the forging of political alliances. As night fell, the bustling streets would gradually quiet, though guards and night watchmen would remain vigilant, patrolling the cities to maintain order. In rural areas, villagers might gather around fires, sharing folk tales and songs passed down through generations. Thus, we see that daily life in Mughal India was a complex tapestry of experiences, shaped by social status, occupation, and the intricate interplay of various cultural traditions. From the glittering halls of the imperial palace to the humble dwellings of rural peasants, each individual played a part in the grand narrative of this remarkable empire. As we conclude our exploration of daily life in Mughal India, we are reminded of the enduring legacy of this period. The art, architecture, cuisine, and cultural practices that emerged during the Mughal era continue to influence the Indian subcontinent and beyond, serving as a testament to the rich and complex history of this fascinating civilization. As we conclude our journey through Mughal India, it's clear that surviving in this era would have been a formidable challenge. The stark social hierarchy, ever-present threat of disease, and the constant political intrigue made daily life precarious for most. While the Mughal Empire brought about significant advancements in art, architecture, and administration, it also perpetuated a system of inequality that would have been difficult for modern individuals to navigate. The opulence of the royal court stood in sharp contrast to the struggles of the common people. Had you found yourself transported to Mughal India, your survival would have depended greatly on your social status, skills, and ability to adapt to a vastly different cultural and political landscape. The complex etiquette, unfamiliar customs, and potential language barriers would have posed immediate challenges. Moreover, the lack of modern medical knowledge and sanitation practices would have put you at constant risk of illnesses that are easily treatable today. The ever-present threat of war, rebellion, and shifting political alliances would have added another layer of uncertainty to your existence. In essence, while the Mughal period was a time of great cultural and artistic achievement, it was also an era fraught with dangers and hardships that most modern individuals would find overwhelming. As we move on to our next historical period, remember that each era of history presents its own unique set of challenges for survival. As we conclude our exploration of ancient China's challenges, let's shift our focus to another fascinating historical period. Our next destination takes us across continents and centuries to a time of great upheaval and societal transformation. Prepare yourself for a journey through. As we drift through the annals of history, let's now turn our attention to the cradle of Western civilization, ancient Greece. A land of myths, philosophers, and city-states, Greece has left an indelible mark on our modern world. But life in this ancient society was far from the idyllic scenes often portrayed in art and literature. From the harsh realities of daily life to the complexities of their political systems, ancient Greece presents a fascinating yet challenging landscape for our modern sensibilities. As we drift further into our historical slumber, let's journey to the sun-drenched shores of ancient Greece. Here, daily life was a tapestry of tradition, philosophy, and societal norms that might seem alien to our modern sensibilities. In the bustling city-states of Athens, Sparta, and Thebes, citizens awoke with the first light of dawn. The day began early, often before sunrise, as people prepared for their daily routines. Men, who were considered the primary citizens, would typically head to the agora, the central marketplace and gathering place of the city. The agora was more than just a place for commerce. It was the beating heart of Greek social and political life. Here, citizens would discuss politics, philosophy, and the latest gossip. Imagine the animated debates echoing through the colonnades as men argued over the merits of democracy or the latest decree from the assembly. Women, on the other hand, had a more restricted role in society. Their domain was primarily the oikos, or household. They were responsible for managing the home, overseeing slaves, and raising children. While this might seem limiting by today's standards, some women did find ways to exert influence, particularly in religious roles or through their husband's political connections. Education was highly valued in ancient Greece, but it wasn't universal. Boys from wealthy families would attend schools or be tutored in subjects like reading, writing, mathematics, music, and physical education. The gymnasium was not just a place for exercise, but also for intellectual pursuits. Here, young men would engage in philosophical discussions while hunting their physical prowess. Girls, however, received most of their education at home, learning skills like weaving, cooking, and household management. Some were taught to read and write, but this was not the norm. The Spartan system was an exception, where girls received physical training alongside boys, though for different purposes, to produce strong mothers for future warriors. The ancient Greeks placed great importance on personal hygiene and grooming. Public baths were common in cities, serving as both practical facilities and social hubs. Men would often visit barbers not just for haircuts and shaves, but also for the latest news and gossip. Clothing was simple yet elegant. Men typically wore a chiton, a rectangular piece of cloth pinned at the shoulders and belted at the waist. Women wore a longer version called a peplos. Over these, a hamadion, a cloak-like garment, could be draped for warmth or style. Footwear consisted of sandals or, for the wealthy, leather shoes. The Greek diet was based on the Mediterranean triad: wheat, olive oil, and wine. Bread was a staple, often accompanied by vegetables, fruits, and occasionally meat or fish. Olives and olive oil were used extensively in cooking and as a condiment. Wine, usually diluted with water, was the drink of choice for both refreshment and social lubrication. Meals were social affairs. The symposium, a male-only drinking party, was a key part of upper-class social life. These gatherings combined intellectual discourse with entertainment, often lasting late into the night. Women were generally excluded from these events, except for entertainers or courtesans. Religion permeated every aspect of Greek life. The pantheon of gods and goddesses was ever present, with temples, shrines, and statues dotting the landscape. Daily rituals and prayers were common, and major festivals punctuated the calendar year. The most famous of these was the Olympic Games, held every 4 years in honor of Zeus. Work in ancient Greece varied greatly depending on social status. Citizens might be farmers, craftsmen, or merchants. Many owned small plots of land and worked them with the help of family members or slaves. In cities, artisans and craftsmen produced goods in small workshops, often living above their places of business. Slavery was an integral part of Greek society, with slaves performing a wide range of tasks from household chores to mining and agricultural labor. While some slaves were treated relatively well, others faced harsh conditions, especially those working in mines or on large estates. As the day wound down, families would gather for the evening meal. This was typically the main meal of the day and a time for social interaction within the household. After dinner, wealthier citizens might attend symposia or other social gatherings, while others retired early to prepare for another day of work. Entertainment in ancient Greece took many forms. Theater was hugely popular, with tragedies and comedies drawing large crowds to outdoor amphitheaters. Athletic competitions were also a major source of entertainment, culminating in the Olympic Games. Music and dance played important roles in both religious ceremonies and social gatherings. As night fell, the streets of Greek cities would gradually empty. Without street lighting, most people retired to their homes after sunset. The wealthy might continue their socializing by lamplight, but for most, the day ended with the fading light. This daily rhythm of life in ancient Greece, while different in many ways from our modern experience, reveals a society deeply engaged with ideas, community, and the pursuit of what they considered a good life. From the philosophical debates in the agora to the intimate family dinners, the ancient Greeks laid the foundations for many aspects of Western civilization that we still recognize today. As we drift off to sleep, imagine yourself walking through the streets of ancient Athens, the scent of olive groves in the air, the sound of passionate debate echoing from the agora, and the timeless beauty of marble temples silhouetted against the setting sun. In this world so distant yet so influential, the seeds of our own society were sown, reminding us of the enduring legacy of ancient Greece. As we conclude our journey through ancient Greece, it's clear that while this civilization laid the groundwork for many aspects of modern Western society, daily life was far from ideal by today's standards. The stark social inequalities, harsh punishments, and limited personal freedoms would make it challenging for a modern person to adapt. Despite its flaws, ancient Greece's contributions to philosophy, democracy, and the arts continue to influence our world today. The writings of Plato and Aristotle still shape academic discourse, while the democratic principles first established in Athens serve as a foundation for many modern governments. However, it's crucial to remember that our romanticized view of ancient Greece often overlooks the harsh realities faced by the majority of its population. Slaves, women, and foreigners had few rights and little say in the society that we now celebrate for its advancement. As we drift off to sleep, let's appreciate the progress humanity has made since those ancient times. While we may admire the achievements of ancient Greece, we can also be grateful for the many comforts and freedoms we enjoy in the modern world, comforts that would have been unimaginable to even the wealthiest Greek citizens. In our next segment, we'll explore another fascinating civilization and discover why you wouldn't survive there either. But for now, let the gentle waves of the Aegean Sea lull you into a peaceful slumber as we bid farewell to the world of ancient Greece. As we conclude our exploration of ancient China's challenges, let's shift our focus to another intriguing historical period. Our next destination takes us across continents and centuries to a time of great change and upheaval in European society. Prepare yourself for a journey into the complex world of. We journey through the annals of history. Our next stop takes us to the vast and complex Russian Empire. Spanning across two continents and encompassing numerous ethnic groups, this colossal realm was a force to be reckoned with for centuries. From the frozen tundras of Siberia to the shores of the Black Sea, the Russian Empire's influence stretched far and wide. Let's delve into the intricacies of daily life in this formidable empire, where survival was often a challenging endeavor for the common folk. As we journey through the annals of history, let us now turn our attention to the vast and enigmatic Russian Empire. In this segment, we'll explore the daily life of its inhabitants, from the opulent palaces of the nobility to the humble dwellings of the peasantry. The Russian Empire at its height spanned nearly one-sixth of the Earth's landmass. This immense territory was home to a diverse population, each group experiencing life in dramatically different ways. Let's begin our exploration with the ruling class, the nobility. At the apex of Russian society stood the Tsar, the absolute monarch whose word was law. The Tsar lived in unparalleled luxury, residing in grand palaces like the Winter Palace in St. Petersburg. Every aspect of the Tsar's life was governed by strict protocol and ceremony. Below the Tsar were the noble families who owned vast estates and lived lives of privilege. Their days were filled with social engagements, hunting parties, and cultural pursuits. Many spoke French rather than Russian, considering it the language of refinement and culture. The nobility's children were often educated by private tutors or sent to prestigious academies. They learned languages, literature, dance, and etiquette, skills deemed essential for their future roles in society and at court. However, life for the nobility wasn't all leisure. Many held important positions in the government or military, and their fortunes were tied closely to the favor of the Tsar. A fall from grace could mean exile to Siberia or worse. Moving down the social ladder, we come to the merchant class. These were the entrepreneurs and businessmen of the empire. While not as prestigious as the nobility, successful merchants could amass considerable wealth and influence. Merchants' lives revolved around their businesses. They would rise early to oversee shipments, negotiate deals, and manage their accounts. Many lived above their shops in urban areas, their homes a mix of living quarters and storage for their goods. The Russian Orthodox Church played a central role in the lives of most Russians, regardless of class. The church calendar dictated many aspects of daily life, from fasting periods to religious festivals. Priests were respected figures in their communities, often serving as advisors and mediators. Now let's turn our attention to the vast majority of the Russian Empire's population, the peasants. Life for a Russian peasant was hard, filled with long hours of back-breaking labor and constant struggle against the harsh climate. Most peasants lived in small villages called mir or общina. These communities functioned on a system of collective responsibility, where decisions were made by village elders and land was periodically redistributed among families. A typical peasant's day would begin before dawn. Men would head out to the fields, while women tended to household chores, cared for children, and often worked in the fields as well. Children as young as 6 or 7 were expected to contribute to the family's labor. The peasant's diet was simple and monotonous. Black bread, cabbage soup, and porridge were staples. Meat was a rare luxury, usually reserved for special occasions or religious festivals. Vodka, despite its reputation, was not an everyday drink for most peasants due to its cost. Housing for peasants was basic and crowded. A typical izba or peasant hut was a single-room log structure with a large brick oven at its center. This oven served for cooking, heating, and often as a sleeping platform during cold winter nights. Sanitation was poor and disease was a constant threat. Many villages lacked access to clean water and medical care was scarce. Folk remedies and superstitions often took the place of proper medical treatment. Education for peasant children was limited. While reforms in the late 19th century aimed to improve literacy rates, many peasants remained illiterate. Those who did receive education often learned little more than basic reading, writing, and arithmetic. The relationship between peasants and landowners was complex. While the abolition of serfdom in 1861 granted peasants more freedom, many remained economically tied to their former masters through debt and land arrangements. Peasant life was governed by the rhythms of nature and the agricultural calendar. Planting and harvest times were crucial, with the entire community working together to ensure a successful crop. Failure could mean starvation during the long, harsh Russian winter. Despite the hardships, peasant communities maintained rich cultural traditions. Folk tales, songs, and dances were passed down through generations, providing a sense of identity and continuity in the face of difficult circumstances. In urban areas, a growing working class emerged as industrialization took hold in the late 19th century. Factory workers faced long hours, dangerous conditions, and low pay. Many lived in overcrowded tenements, a far cry from the rural villages they had left behind. The contrast between urban and rural life in the Russian Empire was stark. Cities like St. Petersburg and Moscow were centers of culture and modernization, with grand architecture, theaters, and universities. Meanwhile, much of rural Russia remained largely unchanged for centuries. As we conclude our exploration of daily life in the Russian Empire, it's important to note the seeds of change that were beginning to take root. The vast inequalities and hardships faced by the majority of the population would eventually lead to social unrest and revolution. From the glittering ballrooms of the Winter Palace to the humble izbas of remote villages, the Russian Empire was a land of extremes. It was a society on the brink of transformation, where centuries-old traditions coexisted uneasily with the forces of modernization. In our next segment, we'll delve into another fascinating period of history, continuing our journey through the everyday lives of people long past. Until then, let the echoes of Russian history lull you into a peaceful slumber. As we conclude our exploration of the Russian Empire, it's clear that life for the average person was far from easy. The stark contrast between the opulent lives of the nobility and the harsh realities faced by the peasants paints a vivid picture of a deeply divided society. The serfs, who made up the majority of the population, endured backbreaking labor, limited freedoms, and often lived in abject poverty. Their lives were dictated by the whims of their landowners, with little hope for social mobility or improvement. Meanwhile, the nobility enjoyed luxuries and privileges that were unimaginable to the common folk. Their grand palaces, elaborate balls, and extravagant lifestyles stood in sharp contrast to the mud-floored huts and meager existence of the peasantry. The Russian Empire's vast size and diverse population presented unique challenges for governance. The autocratic rule of the czars, while maintaining order, also stifled progress and innovation in many areas of society. Despite these hardships, the Russian people developed a rich culture, with contributions to literature, music, and art that continue to be celebrated worldwide. The resilience of the Russian spirit in the face of adversity is a testament to the endurance of the human will. As we drift off to sleep, let's reflect on how far we've come from those challenging times and be grateful for the comforts and freedoms we enjoy today. As we conclude our exploration of ancient China's challenges, let's shift our focus to another fascinating civilization. We'll now journey across time and space to uncover the hidden perils of daily life in a different era and culture. Prepare yourself for more eye-opening historical revelations. As we journey through the annals of history, our next stop takes us to the lush jungles of Central America. Here, we encounter the enigmatic Maya civilization, a culture that flourished for over 3 millennia. From towering pyramids to intricate calendars, the Maya left an indelible mark on the world. But what was life really like in this ancient society? Let's peel back the layers of time and explore the daily routines, beliefs, and challenges faced by the Maya people. Prepare to be transported to a world both familiar and utterly foreign. As we delve into the daily life of the Maya civilization, we uncover a world both fascinating and complex. The Maya, known for their advanced mathematics, astronomy, and architecture, also had intricate social structures and daily routines that might surprise you. Let's begin with the typical Maya home. Unlike the grand stone temples and palaces we often associate with this civilization, most Maya lived in simple thatched roof houses. These dwellings, called na in the Maya language, were usually single-room structures built on low platforms of limestone and packed earth. The average Maya family would wake up at dawn, as the tropical heat made it essential to complete most work before midday. Men would head out to the fields, while women began their domestic duties. Children, depending on their age and gender, would either assist their parents or attend to their own tasks. Agriculture was the backbone of Maya society. Farmers used a technique called slash and burn, or milpa, to clear land for planting. Their main crops included maize, beans, and squash, a combination often referred to as the Three Sisters. These staples formed the basis of the Maya diet, supplemented by fruits, vegetables, and occasionally meat from hunting or domesticated animals. While men worked in the fields, women were responsible for a wide range of domestic duties. They ground maize into flour using a stone tool called a metate, prepared meals, wove textiles, and cared for children. The preparation of food was particularly time-consuming, with the process of making tortillas alone taking several hours each day. Education in Maya society varied depending on social class. Children of nobles received formal education in writing, mathematics, and astronomy. However, most children learned through observation and participation in daily activities. They would shadow their parents, gradually taking on more responsibilities as they grew older. The Maya had a complex social hierarchy. At the top were the nobles and priests, followed by merchants and artisans, and then the majority of the population who were farmers and laborers. Social mobility was limited, with most people remaining in the class they were born into throughout their lives. Religion played a central role in Maya daily life. The Maya pantheon included numerous deities associated with nature, time, and human activities. Rituals and ceremonies were frequent, ranging from simple household offerings to elaborate public spectacles. Even mundane activities often had religious significance, with prayers and rituals integrated into daily routines. One aspect of Maya life that often surprises modern observers is their concept of beauty. The Maya practiced various forms of body modification, including head shaping, tooth filing, and elaborate jewelry. Parents would begin shaping their infants' heads soon after birth, using boards to create an elongated shape considered aesthetically pleasing. Personal hygiene was important to the Maya. They bathed frequently and used steam baths similar to saunas. These baths, called zumpolche, were not only for cleanliness but also had ritual significance and were believed to have healing properties. The Maya had a sophisticated understanding of medicine, blending practical knowledge with spiritual beliefs. They used a wide variety of plants for medicinal purposes and were skilled at setting bones and treating wounds. However, many illnesses were attributed to supernatural causes, requiring the intervention of shamans or priests. Trade was a crucial aspect of Maya life, with extensive networks connecting different cities and regions. Markets were bustling centers of activity where people could exchange goods and socialize. Items traded included salt, obsidian, jade, cacao beans, which were also used as currency, and luxury items like colorful feathers and shells. The Maya were skilled craftsmen, producing intricate works in various materials. Pottery was particularly important, used for both practical and ceremonial purposes. The creation of textiles was another significant craft, with women weaving elaborate designs using cotton and other fibers. As the day progressed, Maya communities would gather in central plazas for various activities. These could include markets, religious ceremonies, or ball games. The Maya ball game, played on specially constructed courts, was more than just a sport. It had deep religious and political significance. As evening approached, families would return to their homes. The main meal of the day was typically eaten in the late afternoon or early evening. This would usually consist of corn tortillas, beans, and vegetables, with meat being a rare luxury for most people. Nighttime in Maya society was not without activity. Astronomy was a crucial part of Maya culture, and priests would often conduct observations and calculations during the night. For the average Maya, however, activities after dark were limited due to the lack of artificial lighting. The Maya calendar, renowned for its complexity and accuracy, governed many aspects of daily life. It consisted of multiple interlocking cycles, including a 260-day sacred calendar and a 365-day solar calendar. These calendars determined everything from planting times to religious festivals. Despite the advancements of Maya civilization, life expectancy was relatively short by modern standards. The average Maya could expect to live into their 40s if they survived childhood. Hard physical labor, limited medical knowledge, and periodic food shortages all contributed to this shorter lifespan. As we conclude our exploration of daily life in the Maya civilization, it's important to note that this was a culture that thrived for over 3,000 years. During this time, customs and practices evolved and varied across different regions and time periods. The snapshot we've examined here provides a general overview, but the full tapestry of Maya life was rich, diverse, and constantly changing. As we conclude our journey through the Maya civilization, it's important to reflect on the lasting impact of this ancient culture. The Maya's contributions to astronomy, mathematics, and architecture continue to astound researchers to this day. Their intricate calendar systems and precise astronomical observations were far ahead of their time. The Maya's ability to predict celestial events with remarkable accuracy speaks volumes about their scientific prowess. In the realm of mathematics, the Maya developed the concept of zero independently from other civilizations. This mathematical innovation allowed for complex calculations and record-keeping that supported their advanced society. The architectural marvels left behind by the Maya, such as the stepped pyramids and elaborate palace complexes, stand as a testament to their engineering skills. These structures have withstood the test of time, revealing the durability of Maya construction techniques. While the reasons for the decline of Maya city-states remain a subject of debate among historians, the legacy of their civilization endures. Modern-day descendants of the Maya continue to preserve aspects of their ancestral culture, keeping ancient traditions alive. As we drift off to sleep, let us ponder the achievements of the Maya and the mysteries that still surround their civilization. Their story reminds us of the rich tapestry of human history and the enduring impact of ancient cultures on our world today. As we conclude our exploration of ancient China's challenges, let's shift our focus to another fascinating civilization. Our next destination takes us across continents and centuries, to a land of pyramids, pharaohs, and powerful gods. Prepare to journey back in time to ancient Egypt. As we drift through the annals of history, our journey takes us to the vast and influential Ottoman Empire. Spanning over 6 centuries, this powerful realm stretched across 3 continents, leaving an indelible mark on the world. From its humble beginnings in Anatolia to its zenith as a global superpower, the Ottoman Empire's story is one of conquest, culture, and complex governance. Let's explore the intricacies of daily life, the challenges of survival, and the lasting legacy of this once mighty empire. As we journey through the annals of history, let us turn our attention to the Ottoman Empire, a realm that stretched across 3 continents and endured for over 6 centuries. In this segment, we'll explore the intricacies of daily life within this vast and complex society. The Ottoman Empire at its height encompassed a diverse array of cultures, religions, and ethnicities. From the bustling streets of Constantinople to the remote villages of Anatolia, life in the empire was as varied as its geography. Let us begin by examining the social structure that formed the backbone of Ottoman society. At the apex of the Ottoman social pyramid stood the Sultan, the absolute monarch whose word was law. Below him were the ruling class, known as the askari, which included military officials, religious leaders, and bureaucrats. These elites enjoyed privileges and exemptions from taxes, setting them apart from the common people. The vast majority of the empire's population belonged to the Riya, or the producing class. This group included farmers, artisans, merchants, and non-Muslims who paid taxes and had limited political influence. Despite their lower status, the Riya played a crucial role in the empire's economy and cultural development. One of the most distinctive features of Ottoman society was the millet system. This administrative structure allowed religious minorities, such as Christians and Jews, to maintain a degree of autonomy in managing their internal affairs. Each millet was led by its religious leaders, who were responsible for collecting taxes and maintaining order within their communities. Daily life in Ottoman cities revolved around the neighborhood, or mahal. These close-knit communities were often organized around a mosque, church, or synagogue, depending on the predominant faith of the residents. The mahal served as a microcosm of Ottoman society, where people of different backgrounds lived and worked side by side. In the heart of Ottoman cities, we find the bazaar, a vibrant marketplace teeming with activity. Here, merchants from across the empire and beyond would gather to trade exotic goods, spices, textiles, and crafts. The bazaar was not just a place of commerce, but also a social hub where news and gossip spread and cultural exchanges took place. The Ottoman Empire was renowned for its architectural marvels, and nowhere was this more evident than in its public baths or hammams. These ornate structures served multiple purposes beyond personal hygiene. They were places of relaxation, socialization, and even business negotiation. Both men and women frequented the hammams, though at separate times or in segregated sections. Education in the Ottoman Empire varied greatly depending on one's social status and location. For the elite, the palace school system provided a rigorous education in languages, sciences, and the arts. The madrases, or religious schools, offered instruction in Islamic law and theology. For the common people, basic education often took place in mektebs, small schools attached to mosques where children learned to read and recite the Quran. The Ottoman Empire's culinary traditions were as diverse as its population. The imperial kitchen in Topkapi Palace employed hundreds of cooks, each specializing in different dishes. From the hearty meat stews of the Balkans to the delicate pastries of the Levant, Ottoman cuisine was a fusion of flavors from across the empire. Coffee, introduced in the 16th century, became an integral part of Ottoman social life, with coffee houses serving as centers of intellectual discourse and political debate. Family life in the Ottoman Empire was patriarchal, with men holding authority over the household. Marriage was considered a crucial institution, often arranged by families to strengthen social and economic ties. While polygamy was permitted under Islamic law, it was primarily practiced by the wealthy elite, as maintaining multiple households was beyond the means of most ordinary citizens. The role of women in Ottoman society was complex and varied. While they faced certain restrictions, particularly in public life, women also wielded considerable influence within the household and, in some cases, in politics and commerce. The imperial harem, far from being merely a place of pleasure, was a powerful institution where the mothers and wives of sultans often played pivotal roles in shaping the empire's destiny. Clothing in the Ottoman Empire was not just a matter of personal taste, but also a reflection of one's social status and religious affiliation. Sumptuary laws dictated what colors and fabrics different groups could wear. The elite adorned themselves in luxurious silks and furs, while the common people wore simpler garments made of wool or cotton. Headgear was particularly significant, with turbans for Muslims and distinctive hats for non-Muslims serving as clear markers of identity. The Ottoman Empire's military prowess was legendary, and the lives of its soldiers were distinct from those of civilians. The Janissary Corps, elite infantry units composed of Christian youths converted to Islam, lived in barracks and devoted themselves entirely to military service. These soldiers were forbidden to marry or engage in trade, maintaining a monk-like existence focused on warfare and loyalty to the Sultan. Agriculture remained the backbone of the Ottoman economy throughout its history. The timur system, where military officers were granted land in exchange for providing troops and collecting taxes, shaped rural life for centuries. Peasants worked the land, paying taxes in kind and participating in communal labor projects. This system ensured a steady supply of food for the empire's growing population and resources for its military campaigns. As we draw this segment to a close, it's important to note that daily life in the Ottoman Empire was far from static. Over its long history, the empire experienced significant social, economic, and cultural changes. From the reforms of the Tanzimat period to the modernization efforts of the 19th century, Ottoman society continually evolved, adapting to new challenges and influences from both within and without. The legacy of the Ottoman Empire's daily life can still be felt today in the cuisines, architectural styles, and cultural practices of the regions it once ruled. As we reflect on this complex and fascinating society, we are reminded of the rich tapestry of human experience that history unfolds before us, each thread contributing to the grand narrative of our shared past. As we conclude our exploration of the Ottoman Empire, it's clear that life in this vast and complex civilization was far from simple. The empire's intricate social structure, strict religious laws, and complex bureaucracy would have made daily life challenging for the average person. While the empire reached great heights of cultural and scientific achievement, it also faced numerous challenges. The constant threat of war, disease outbreaks, and political instability meant that survival was never guaranteed, even for those in positions of power. The Ottoman legal system, based on Islamic law and imperial decrees, would seem alien and often harsh by modern standards. Punishments for crimes could be severe, and the concept of individual rights as we understand them today is largely non-existent. Moreover, the vast disparities between social classes meant that opportunities for advancement were limited for most people. The majority of the population lived as peasants or urban laborers, with little hope of improving their station in life. In retrospect, while the Ottoman Empire left an indelible mark on history and shaped much of the modern Middle East and Balkans, it's clear that surviving and thriving in this era would have been a formidable challenge for anyone accustomed to contemporary comforts and freedoms. As we drift off to sleep, let's appreciate the relative ease and security of our modern lives. while acknowledging the complex legacy left behind by empires like the Ottomans. As we conclude our exploration of ancient China's challenges, let's shift our focus to another fascinating historical period. We'll now journey to medieval Europe, where life was equally perilous but for entirely different reasons. Prepare to discover why surviving in this era was no easy feat. As we leave the ancient world behind, our journey through time brings us to the dark and mysterious realm of medieval Europe. This era, spanning roughly from the 5th to the 15th century, was a time of great change, conflict, and societal upheaval. From the fall of the Roman Empire to the dawn of the Renaissance, medieval Europe was a world of stark contrasts. Knights and castles, plagues and famines, feudalism and faith, all these elements shaped the lives of those who lived during this tumultuous period. Let's delve into the challenges that made survival in medieval Europe a daily struggle for many. As we journey back in time to medieval Europe, we find ourselves in a world vastly different from our own. The daily life of people during this period was marked by hardship, superstition, and a rigid social hierarchy. Let's explore what it was like to live in this era and why you might not have survived a single day in medieval Europe. First, let's consider the living conditions. Most people lived in small, cramped houses made of wood, mud, and straw. These dwellings were often dark, damp, and smoky, with little ventilation. Families would share their living space with their livestock, leading to unsanitary conditions and the spread of disease. Speaking of disease, medieval Europe was plagued by numerous health issues. The lack of proper sanitation and medical knowledge meant that even minor injuries or illnesses could be fatal. The infamous Black Death, which struck in the 14th century, wiped out nearly a third of Europe's population. Without modern medicine, you'd be at constant risk of succumbing to various ailments. Your daily routine would depend largely on your social status. For the majority of people who were peasants or serfs, life revolved around backbreaking labor. You'd wake up at dawn and spend most of your day working in the fields, tending to crops or animals. The work was physically demanding and relentless, with little time for rest or leisure. If you were fortunate enough to be born into nobility, your life would be more comfortable, but not without its challenges. You'd be expected to manage your estate, engage in political intrigues, and potentially participate in warfare. The constant threat of invasion or rebellion meant that even the upper classes lived with a sense of insecurity. Food in medieval Europe was often bland and monotonous. The diet of the lower classes consisted mainly of bread, porridge, and vegetables. Meat was a luxury reserved for special occasions or the wealthy. Malnutrition was common, and famines were frequent due to crop failures and harsh weather conditions. Water was often unsafe to drink, contaminated with bacteria and parasites. As a result, many people, including children, drank weak ale or wine instead. This constant consumption of alcohol, while safer than water, had its own health consequences. Personal hygiene was far from what we're accustomed to today. Bathing was infrequent, and people often wore the same clothes for extended periods. The streets were filled with human and animal waste, creating a breeding ground for disease-carrying pests like rats and fleas. Education was a privilege reserved for a select few, usually those in religious orders or the nobility. Most people were illiterate and had little knowledge of the world beyond their immediate surroundings. Superstition and folklore played a significant role in explaining natural phenomena and guiding daily life. The justice system in medieval Europe was harsh and often arbitrary. Punishments for crimes were severe, ranging from public humiliation to torture and execution. Even minor offenses could result in brutal consequences, and the concept of a fair trial was far from established. Religion played a central role in medieval society. The Catholic Church wielded enormous power and influence over both the common people and the nobility. Daily life was structured around religious observances, and the fear of divine punishment or eternal damnation was ever present. If you were a woman in medieval Europe, your life would be particularly challenging. Women had few rights and were often treated as property. Your primary role would be to bear children and manage the household. Opportunities for education or personal advancement were extremely limited. The constant threat of violence loomed over medieval society. Wars, invasions, and local conflicts were common occurrences. Even if you weren't directly involved in combat, your village or town could be raided or pillaged at any time. The lack of a centralized police force meant that personal safety was often in your own hands. Travel was slow, dangerous, and uncommon for most people. Roads were poorly maintained and infested with bandits. Most individuals lived and died within a few miles of where they were born, never venturing far from their homes. The concept of childhood as we know it today didn't exist in medieval Europe. Children were often treated as small adults, expected to work and contribute to the family's survival from a young age. Child mortality rates were extremely high, with many not surviving past their 5th birthday. As night fell, the dangers only increased. With no street lighting, darkness brought new threats. Thieves and cutthroats roamed the streets, and wild animals could wander into settlements. Most people retreated to their homes at sunset, huddling together for warmth and safety. In conclusion, surviving a day in medieval Europe would have been a formidable challenge. The combination of poor living conditions, lack of medical knowledge, constant physical labor, and ever-present dangers made life short and difficult for most people. While we may romanticize certain aspects of this period, the reality was far from idyllic. It serves as a stark reminder of how far we've come and the comforts we often take for granted in our modern world. As we conclude our journey through medieval Europe, it's clear that life during this period was far from the romantic notions often portrayed in modern media. The harsh realities of daily existence, from poor sanitation to limited health care, made survival a constant challenge for the average person. The feudal system, while providing some structure, also reinforced stark inequalities. Peasants toiled endlessly, barely scraping by, while nobles enjoyed relative comfort. Yet even the wealthy weren't immune to the era's dangers, facing threats from rival lords, diseases, and the ever-present risk of famine. Religion played a central role in medieval life, offering both comfort and control. The Catholic Church's influence extended far beyond spiritual matters, shaping politics, education, and social norms. This pervasive power sometimes led to corruption and the suppression of scientific thought. Despite these hardships, it's important to remember that people in medieval Europe were not so different from us. They loved, laughed, and dreamed of better lives. The resilience of the human spirit shone through even in these challenging times, laying the groundwork for future advancements. As we drift off to sleep, let's appreciate the comforts and freedoms we enjoy today, many of which were unimaginable to our medieval ancestors. Their struggles and perseverance have contributed to the world we now inhabit, reminding us of the long arc of human progress. As we conclude our exploration of ancient China's challenges, let's shift our focus to another fascinating civilization. In the next segment, we'll journey to the heart of Mesoamerica, where the mighty Aztec Empire once flourished. Prepare to discover why surviving in this complex society was no easy feat. As we drift through the sands of time, let us turn our attention to the cradle of civilization, ancient Mesopotamia. This land between two rivers, the Tigris and Euphrates, was home to some of humanity's earliest complex societies. From the Sumerians to the Babylonians, Mesopotamia saw the rise and fall of great empires, each leaving its mark on history. In this segment, we'll explore the daily life, innovations, and challenges faced by those who called this ancient land home. Prepare to journey back to a world of ziggurats, cuneiform, and the birth of urban living. As we journey back in time to ancient Mesopotamia, we find ourselves in the cradle of civilization, where the first cities emerged and writing was invented. Let's explore the daily life of the ancient Mesopotamians, a topic so mundane it might just lull you into a peaceful slumber. In the land between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, around 3500 BCE, people began to settle in larger communities. These early city-states were the birthplace of urban living as we know it. The average Mesopotamian's day started at dawn, as the first rays of sunlight crept over the mud brick houses. Most people lived in small, single-story homes made of sun-dried mud bricks. These houses were typically clustered together, forming narrow, winding streets. The roofs were flat and often used as additional living space during the cooler evenings. Inside, the homes were sparsely furnished, with reed mats for sleeping and a few clay pots for storage. The majority of Mesopotamians were farmers, and their daily routine revolved around agricultural tasks. They would rise early to tend to their fields, which were usually located outside the city walls. The main crops were barley, wheat, and dates. Irrigation was crucial in this arid region, so maintaining canals and water distribution systems was a constant task. For those living within the city, daily life centered around various crafts and trades. Potters shaped clay into vessels for storage and cooking. Weavers created textiles from wool and flax. Metalworkers forged tools and weapons from copper and bronze. The rhythmic sounds of their work would fill the air from morning until dusk. Women in Mesopotamian society had various roles. They were responsible for household duties, including food preparation, childcare, and weaving. Some women also worked as scribes, priestesses, or even rulers in certain periods. However, their status was generally subordinate to men in this patriarchal society. Speaking of food, the Mesopotamian diet was rather simple. The staple was bread made from barley or wheat. This was often supplemented with onions, garlic, lentils, and occasionally fish from the rivers. Meat was a luxury reserved for the wealthy or for special occasions. Beer, made from barley, was the most common drink and was consumed by all social classes. Education was limited to a small portion of the population. Most children learned their parents' trades through apprenticeship. However, for the elite, there were schools called tablet houses, where young boys learned to read and write cuneiform, the world's earliest known writing system. This complex script was written on clay tablets using a reed stylus. Religion played a central role in Mesopotamian life. Each city-state had its own patron deity, housed in a large temple complex called a ziggurat. These stepped pyramid structures were not only places of worship, but also centers of economic and administrative activity. Priests and priestesses were responsible for daily rituals and offerings to the gods. The concept of time in Mesopotamia was quite different from ours. They divided the day into 12 double hours, using water clocks and sundials to track time. However, for most people, the day was simply divided into morning, midday, and evening, with activities governed by the sun's position. Law and order were maintained through a complex system of codes, the most famous being Hammurabi's Code. This set of laws, inscribed on a large stone stele, covered everything from property rights to criminal punishments. The principle of an eye for an eye originated from this ancient legal system. Entertainment in ancient Mesopotamia was simple by our standards. Music was popular, with instruments like lyres, harps, and drums used in both religious ceremonies and secular celebrations. Storytelling was another common pastime, with epic tales like the Epic of Gilgamesh being passed down through generations. As the day drew to a close, families would gather for the evening meal. This was often the main meal of the day and a time for social interaction. After sunset, most activities ceased due to the lack of artificial lighting. People would retire to their homes, perhaps spending some time on the roof to escape the heat before going to sleep. Health and hygiene in Mesopotamia were rudimentary by modern standards. While they had some understanding of medicine, many ailments were attributed to evil spirits or divine punishment. Treatments often involved a combination of herbal remedies and religious rituals. Personal hygiene was maintained through regular bathing in rivers or using water from wells. The Mesopotamian calendar was based on the lunar cycle, with each month beginning at the first sighting of the new moon. This resulted in a year of 354 days, which was periodically adjusted by adding an extra month to keep it in line with the solar year. Festivals and religious observances were tied to this calendar, providing rhythm to the passing of time. Trade was a crucial aspect of Mesopotamian life. The region lacked many natural resources, so materials like stone, wood, and metals had to be imported. This led to the development of complex trade networks extending as far as the Indus Valley in Egypt. Merchants would travel long distances, exchanging goods and ideas with other cultures. The social structure in Mesopotamia was highly stratified. At the top were the rulers, priests, and nobles. Below them were free citizens, including merchants, artisans, and farmers. At the bottom were slaves, often prisoners of war or individuals who had fallen into debt. Social mobility was limited, with most people remaining in the class they were born into. As we conclude our exploration of daily life in ancient Mesopotamia, we can see that while their world was vastly different from ours, many aspects of human experience remain unchanged. The rhythms of work, family life, and the search for meaning continue to shape our existence, just as they did for those living between the rivers thousands of years ago. As we conclude our journey through ancient Mesopotamia, it's clear that life in this cradle of civilization was far from easy. The harsh realities of daily existence would have been a significant challenge for modern individuals accustomed to our conveniences. From the backbreaking labor in the fields to the constant threat of disease and warfare, survival in Mesopotamia required resilience and adaptability. The strict social hierarchies and religious obligations would have been alien concepts to many of us today. Yet it's important to remember that despite these hardships, the people of Mesopotamia laid the foundations for many aspects of our modern world. Their innovations in writing, law, agriculture, and urban planning continue to influence us today. As you drift off to sleep, consider how the struggles and achievements of these ancient people have shaped our present. Their legacy serves as a reminder of human ingenuity and perseverance in the face of adversity. In our next segment, we'll explore another fascinating period of history, continuing our journey through time and across civilizations. Until then, let the soothing waves of ancient history carry you into a peaceful slumber. As we conclude our exploration of ancient China's challenges, let's shift our focus to another intriguing civilization. Our next destination takes us across vast oceans and through centuries of time. Prepare to uncover the mysteries and hardships of life in another ancient society. As we journey through time and across continents, our next stop takes us to the vast and ancient land of Australia. Here we'll explore the rich history and unique culture of the Australian Aboriginals, one of the oldest continuous civilizations on Earth. Their story spans over 65,000 years, filled with complex spiritual beliefs, intricate social structures, and a deep connection to the land. From the Dreamtime to the present day, the Aboriginal people have maintained their traditions and knowledge, offering us a glimpse into a way of life that has endured for millennia. As we journey through the annals of history, let's turn our attention to the fascinating daily life of Australian Aboriginals, one of the world's oldest continuous cultures. Their way of life, deeply rooted in tradition and connection to the land, offers a stark contrast to our modern existence. The Australian Aboriginals have inhabited the continent for over 65,000 years, developing a rich and complex society that remained largely unchanged until European colonization. Their daily life was intricately woven with the natural world, spiritual beliefs, and communal practices. At the heart of Aboriginal life was the concept of dreamtime, or the dreaming. This spiritual belief system explained the creation of the world, the laws of nature, and the role of humans within it. Every aspect of daily life was influenced by these spiritual teachings. The day for an Aboriginal person would typically begin at dawn. As the first rays of sunlight pierced the horizon, camp members would stir from their sleep. Shelter was simple but effective, often consisting of bark huts or rock overhangs, providing protection from the elements while maintaining a close connection to the land. Morning activities centered around food gathering and preparation. Men and women had distinct roles in this process. Women were primarily responsible for gathering plant foods, small animals, and shellfish. They would set out early, carrying wooden dishes called coolamans to collect fruits, nuts, and roots. Meanwhile, men would prepare for hunting expeditions. Their targets varied depending on the region and season, but often included kangaroos, emus, and smaller marsupials. Hunting tools were ingeniously crafted from natural materials. The iconic boomerang, for instance, was not just for returning throws, but was also used as a hunting weapon for small game and birds. One of the most important hunting tools was the spear, often used in conjunction with a spear thrower called a woomera. This device effectively extended the thrower's arm, allowing for greater distance and power. The skill required to use these tools effectively was honed over years of practice and passed down through generations. As the day progressed, the community would come together to share the fruits of their labor. Food preparation was a communal activity, with different members taking on various tasks. Cooking methods were diverse and adapted to the available resources. Earth ovens, where food was wrapped in leaves and buried with hot stones, were common for cooking larger game. Water was a precious resource, especially in the arid interior of the continent. Aboriginal people developed remarkable skills for finding and conserving water. They could locate underground water sources, collect dew, and even extract water from certain plants and roots. Throughout the day, elders would pass on knowledge to younger generations. This oral tradition was crucial for maintaining their culture and survival skills. Stories, songs, and dances were used to convey important information about the land, its resources, and the spiritual world. Art played a significant role in daily life, serving both practical and spiritual purposes. Rock art, body painting, and the creation of intricate patterns on tools and weapons were all part of expressing their culture and connection to the Dreamtime. As the sun began to set, the community would gather around campfires. This was a time for storytelling, singing, and reinforcing social bonds. The flickering flames would cast dancing shadows as elders recounted ancient tales, passing on the wisdom of their ancestors. Night brought its own set of activities. Some Aboriginal groups practiced night hunting, taking advantage of the cooler temperatures and the habits of nocturnal animals. Others used this time for important ceremonies, some of which could last for days or even weeks. The concept of time for Aboriginal people was quite different from our modern, linear understanding. Their perception was more cyclical, based on natural rhythms and seasonal changes. This influenced how they planned their activities and movements across the land. Seasonal changes dictated much of their daily life. Different foods would become available at various times of the year, prompting some groups to undertake seasonal migration. These journeys were guided by intimate knowledge of the land and its resources, passed down through countless generations. Trade was another important aspect of Aboriginal life, though it looked quite different from our modern concept of commerce. Groups would travel long distances to exchange goods, ideas, and participate in ceremonies with other communities. These gatherings strengthened intergroup relationships and allowed for the exchange of resources not available in all areas. The Aboriginal approach to land management was sophisticated and sustainable. They used controlled burning to promote new growth, attract game, and reduce the risk of uncontrolled wildfires. This practice, often referred to as firestick farming, demonstrated their deep understanding of ecological processes. Family and kinship were central to Aboriginal social structure. Extended family groups, or clans, formed the basis of their society. Each person had specific roles and responsibilities based on their gender, age, and kinship relationships. This complex system ensured social cohesion and the equitable distribution of resources. Children in Aboriginal societies learned through observation and gradual participation in adult activities. From a young age, they would accompany adults on food-gathering expeditions, learning to identify edible plants and animal tracks. Play was not just for fun, but also served as preparation for adult roles. As we reflect on the daily life of Australian Aboriginals, it's important to recognize the profound connection they maintained with their environment. Every action, from food gathering to storytelling, was imbued with spiritual significance and a deep respect for the natural world. This way of life, honed over tens of thousands of years, allowed Aboriginal people to thrive in some of the harshest environments on Earth. Their intimate knowledge of the land, sustainable practices, and rich cultural traditions stand as a testament to human adaptability and the power of living in harmony with nature. As we conclude this segment on the daily life of Australian Aboriginals, we're reminded of the diversity of human experience and the many ways societies have organized themselves throughout history. In our next segment, we'll explore another fascinating culture, continuing our journey through the lesser-known corners of human history. The rich tapestry of Australian Aboriginal culture, spanning over 60,000 years, offers us a unique window into human resilience and adaptation. Their deep connection to the land, intricate social structures, and complex spiritual beliefs have allowed them to thrive in one of the world's harshest environments. Despite the challenges posed by European colonization and subsequent policies, Aboriginal communities have shown remarkable strength in preserving their traditions and fighting for recognition. Today, efforts are being made to address historical injustices and promote reconciliation between Indigenous and non-Indigenous Australians. The Dreamtime stories passed down through generations continue to play a vital role in Aboriginal life, providing guidance, explaining natural phenomena, and maintaining cultural identity. These narratives, along with traditional art forms like dot painting and didgeridoo music, have gained international recognition and appreciation. As we conclude our exploration of Aboriginal culture, it's important to remember that their history is not just a tale of the past, but a living, breathing part of Australia's present and future. The wisdom accumulated over millennia offers valuable lessons in sustainable living, community cohesion, and spiritual connection to the natural world. By understanding and respecting Aboriginal culture, we can all contribute to a more inclusive society that values diversity and ancient knowledge. As we drift off to sleep, let's reflect on the enduring legacy of the world's oldest continuous culture and the profound impact it continues to have on our modern world. As we leave behind the intricacies of ancient Chinese society, let's shift our focus to another fascinating period in history. Our next topic will explore the complexities and challenges of life during the Industrial Revolution, a time of great change and innovation that reshaped the world as we know it. As we journey through the annals of history, our next stop takes us to the grand empire of ancient Persia. Spanning from the 6th century BCE to the 7th century CE, this powerful civilization left an indelible mark on the world. From its innovative postal system to its impressive architectural feats, ancient Persia was a realm of both wonder and complexity. But what was daily life really like for the average person in this vast empire? Let's delve into the intricacies of Persian society and uncover why you might not have survived a day in this ancient world. As we continue our journey through ancient civilizations, let's turn our attention to the fascinating world of ancient Persia. This vast empire, known for its rich culture and complex society, offers a glimpse into a daily life far removed from our modern experiences. In ancient Persia, your day would begin at dawn as the first rays of sunlight crept over the horizon. The sound of roosters crowing and the gentle bustle of early risers would fill the air. If you were a commoner, you'd likely live in a modest mud brick house, perhaps with a small courtyard. Your morning routine would start with a prayer to Ahura Mazda, the supreme deity in Zoroastrianism, the dominant religion of the time. This spiritual practice was an integral part of Persian daily life, influencing everything from personal hygiene to social interactions. Speaking of hygiene, the Persians were known for their cleanliness. You'd wash your face and hands with water from a clay jug, using a special powder made from ground herbs as a kind of ancient soap. Dental hygiene was also important, and you might use a twig from a neem tree as a primitive toothbrush. Breakfast would be a simple affair, consisting of flatbread, cheese, and perhaps some dried fruits. If you were wealthy, you might enjoy honey or even eggs. The less fortunate might make do with a porridge made from barley or millet. After breakfast, it would be time to start your day's work. If you were a farmer, which many Persians were, you'd head out to the fields. The Persian Empire was known for its advanced irrigation systems, so you might spend your morning tending to the complex network of canals that brought water to your crops. Alternatively, if you were an artisan, you'd make your way to your workshop in the bustling marketplace. Persia was renowned for its craftsmanship, particularly in metalwork, textiles, and pottery. You might find yourself carefully etching intricate designs onto a silver plate or weaving vibrant patterns into a luxurious carpet. For those in the military, the day would begin with rigorous training. The Persian army was one of the most formidable forces of the ancient world, and soldiers were expected to maintain peak physical condition. You'd practice archery, horseback riding, and hand-to-hand combat, all while wearing heavy armor under the hot sun. If you were a noble or a government official, your morning might involve attending court at one of the grand palaces. The Persian bureaucracy was highly developed, and you'd spend hours poring over official documents, settling disputes, or discussing matters of state. As midday approached, work would pause for the main meal of the day. This would typically consist of a stew made with meat, usually lamb or goat, vegetables, and fragrant herbs. Rice, introduced from India, was a luxury reserved for the wealthy. The meal would be accompanied by more flatbread and perhaps some yogurt to aid digestion. After the meal, many Persians would take a short rest during the hottest part of the day before returning to their tasks. The afternoon would see a continuation of morning activities, with farmers returning to their fields, artisans to their crafts, and officials to their duties. Education was highly valued in Persian society, particularly for boys from noble families. If you were a young male of the upper class, your afternoons might be spent studying subjects like mathematics, astronomy, and literature. The Persian education system was quite advanced for its time, emphasizing both physical and mental development. As the day wore on, you might take a break to visit one of the public baths. These were not just places for cleaning, but important social hubs where people gathered to relax, gossip, and even conduct business. The baths were divided by gender and social class, with the most luxurious reserved for the nobility. If you were a woman in ancient Persia, your daily life would look quite different. While Persian women enjoyed more rights and freedoms than their counterparts in many other ancient societies, their lives were still largely centered around the home. You might spend your day managing household affairs, preparing food, weaving textiles, or raising children. However, it's worth noting that some Persian women did hold positions of power and influence. Queens and noble women could own property, conduct business, and even lead armies in rare cases. But for the average woman, life was more restricted. As evening approached, families would gather for the final meal of the day. This would be a lighter affair than the midday meal, perhaps consisting of leftovers from lunch, more bread, and seasonal fruits. If you were wealthy, you might enjoy imported delicacies like olives from Greece or spices from India. After dinner, Persians valued social time. You might gather with friends or family to share stories, play music, or engage in games. Chess, which originated in this part of the world, was a popular pastime among the educated classes. As night fell, most people would retire early, as artificial lighting was limited and expensive. Oil lamps or candles were used sparingly, and most activities ceased with the setting of the sun. However, for astronomers and some religious practitioners, the night held special significance. They might stay up late, studying the stars or engaging in nocturnal rituals. Before sleep, you'd likely offer another prayer to Ahura Mazda, completing the cycle of your day. You then settle onto a simple bed, perhaps a mat on the floor if you were a commoner, or a more elaborate raised bed if you were wealthy. And so would end a typical day in ancient Persia. From dawn prayers to evening gatherings, from field work to palace intrigues, the daily life of Persians was a rich tapestry of cultural practices, social interactions, and personal duties. While in many ways vastly different from our modern lives, we can still see echoes of their customs and values in various cultures today. As we drift off to sleep, let's reflect on how the routines and rituals of these ancient people shaped one of the most influential empires in history. Their daily lives, though seemingly mundane, laid the foundation for a civilization that would leave an indelible mark on the world. As we conclude our journey through ancient Persia, it's clear that survival in this era would have been a formidable challenge for modern individuals. The complex social hierarchy, strict religious practices, and harsh punishments for even minor infractions created a society vastly different from our own. The Persian Empire's vast expanse and diverse population meant that daily life varied greatly depending on one's location and social status. From the bustling streets of Persepolis to the remote desert outposts, each region presented its own unique set of challenges and opportunities. While the Persians made significant advancements in areas such as architecture, engineering, and administration, life for the average person was still fraught with difficulties. Limited medical knowledge, the constant threat of invasions or internal conflicts, and the whims of rulers could dramatically alter one's fortunes in an instant. However, it's important to recognize that the ancient Persians also left a lasting legacy that continues to influence our world today. Their innovations in governance, art, and culture have shaped civilizations that followed, and many of their achievements still inspire awe and admiration. As we drift off to sleep, let's reflect on how the struggles and triumphs of ancient societies like Persia have contributed to the world we inhabit today. While we may not have survived long in their time, we can certainly appreciate the resilience and ingenuity of those who came before us. As we conclude our exploration of ancient China's challenges, let's shift our focus to another historical period. Our next topic will transport us to a different era, where survival was equally demanding but for entirely different reasons. Prepare to journey through time once again. As we delve deeper into the annals of Chinese history, we arrive at the Song Dynasty, a period of remarkable cultural and economic flourishing. Spanning from 960 to 1279 CE, this era saw China become the most advanced civilization in the world. But don't let the glittering facade fool you. Life for the average person during the Song Dynasty was far from easy. From rampant disease to social inequality and the constant threat of invasion, surviving in Song China was a daily challenge. Let's explore why you might not last long in this golden age of Chinese history. As we delve deeper into the annals of ancient Chinese history, we find ourselves in the Song Dynasty, a period spanning from 960 to 1279 CE. This era was marked by significant advancements in technology, culture, and social structures. However, daily life for the average person during this time was far from easy or comfortable by modern standards. Let's begin by examining the living conditions of the common people during the Song Dynasty. Most individuals resided in cramped, multi-generational households within densely populated urban areas or small rural villages. The typical home was a simple, single-story structure made of wood, mud bricks, or packed earth, with thatched roofs that often leaked during heavy rains. Sanitation was a constant challenge in these crowded living spaces. The concept of indoor plumbing was non-existent for the majority of the population. Instead, people relied on communal wells for water and used chamber pots or public latrines for waste disposal. The streets were often filled with refuse and human waste, creating an environment ripe for disease and pestilence. Speaking of disease, medical knowledge during the Song Dynasty, while advanced for its time, was still primitive by modern standards. Many ailments were attributed to an imbalance of qi or life force, and treatments often involved herbal remedies, acupuncture, or moxibustion. However, the effectiveness of these treatments was limited, and many common illnesses that are easily treatable today could be fatal during this period. The diet of the average person in Song Dynasty China was primarily vegetarian, consisting of rice, millet, vegetables, and occasionally fish. Meat was a luxury reserved for the wealthy or for special occasions. While this diet was generally nutritious, food scarcity was a constant threat, especially in times of drought or flooding. Famines were not uncommon, and many people lived on the brink of starvation. Daily life for most people revolved around work, which was often grueling and time-consuming. Farmers, who made up the majority of the population, toiled from dawn to dusk in the fields, planting and harvesting crops using rudimentary tools. The work was backbreaking and subject to the whims of nature, with a single bad harvest potentially spelling disaster for entire communities. Artisans and craftsmen in urban areas faced their own challenges. While the Song Dynasty saw advancements in various industries, working conditions were often hazardous. Pottery makers, for instance, were exposed to toxic fumes from glazes and kilns, while metal workers risked burns and injuries from molten metals and sharp tools. Women in Song Dynasty China faced additional hardships. While they played crucial roles in both agricultural and household labor, they were generally considered subordinate to men. The practice of foot binding, which began during this period, exemplifies the physical suffering many women endured to conform to societal beauty standards. Education, while valued in Song society, was primarily accessible to the wealthy and elite. The imperial examination system offered a path to social mobility, but the rigorous studying required was beyond the means of most common people. For the majority, formal education was limited or non-existent, with children often starting work at a young age to help support their families. The legal system of the Song Dynasty, while more developed than in previous eras, was still harsh by modern standards. Punishments for crimes were severe and often involved physical torture or execution. Even minor offenses could result in beatings or imprisonment under squalid conditions. Natural disasters posed a constant threat to daily life. The Song Dynasty saw frequent floods, droughts, and earthquakes which could devastate entire regions. The government's ability to respond to these disasters was limited, leaving many people to fend for themselves in the aftermath of such events. Despite these challenges, the Song Dynasty was also a period of remarkable cultural and technological achievements. The invention of movable type printing during this era revolutionized the spread of knowledge and literature. However, it's important to note that these advancements primarily benefited the educated elite, while the lives of common people remained largely unchanged. The urban centers of the Song Dynasty, particularly the capital cities of Kaifeng and later Hangzhou, were marvels of their time. These cities boasted bustling markets, elaborate temples, and vibrant entertainment districts. However, they also faced problems common to large urban areas, such as overcrowding, crime, and pollution. One aspect of daily life that might surprise modern observers was the prevalence of public bathhouses in Song Dynasty cities. These establishments served not only for hygiene purposes, but also as social gathering places. However, the water quality and sanitation practices in these bathhouses were far from ideal by today's standards. The concept of leisure time as we understand it today was largely foreign to most people in Song Dynasty China. While the wealthy might enjoy activities such as poetry composition, painting, or music, the average person's free time was limited and often spent in simple pursuits such as storytelling or playing board games like Go. Religion played a significant role in daily life during this period. Buddhism, Taoism, and Confucianism coexisted, often blending together in popular practice. People sought spiritual comfort and guidance in the face of life's hardships, with temples and shrines serving as important community centers. In conclusion, while the Song Dynasty was a time of great cultural and technological advancement in Chinese history, daily life for the average person was fraught with challenges that would be unimaginable to most of us today. From poor sanitation and limited healthcare to backbreaking labor and the constant threat of natural disasters, surviving in Song Dynasty China required a level of resilience and endurance that few modern individuals could match. We conclude our journey through Song Dynasty China. We've seen a world of innovation, culture, and challenges. From the bustling streets of Kaifeng to the quiet tea houses and crowded examination halls, life in this era was far from simple. The Song period left an indelible mark on Chinese history, influencing art, technology, and governance for centuries to come. As you drift off to sleep, imagine the echoes of this ancient civilization, its triumphs and struggles, batting into the mists of time.